computer. Om Agyana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshor Umilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminite Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Akandamandalakaram Yena Vyaptam Characharam Tat Padam Darshitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hey Krishna, Karuna Sindhu, Dina Bandhu, Jagatpate, Gopesha, Gopika Kanta, Radha Kanta, Namostate. Hey Krishna, Karuna Sindhu, Ocean of Mercy, Karuna Sindhu, Dina Bandhu, Friend of the Fallen, Dina Bandhu, Jagatpate, Lord of the Universe, Gopesha, beloved of the gopis, Gopesha, Gopika Kanta, also the lover of the gopis, Radha Kanta, especially the lover of Srimati Radharani, is considered to be the highest expression of love of God. Absolutely, ever increasing, never static. Radha Kanta, Namostate. Tapta Kanchana Gaurange. And now what the invocation for Radha. Tapta Kanchana Gaurange, she has golden limbs. Krishna's black. Not white. Not white with blue mascara. Black. Ghana Shama. Shama means black. Krishna means black, the word Krishna. When it's used as an adjective, means black. And so, and Ghana Shama, a little bit more specific, the color of a dark monsoon rain cloud. Ghana Shama. But Radha's gold. So they're quite they're an eternal couple, but in our day and age, I suppose they'd be a modern couple in a very nice sort of way. Gold and black. So Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe. Brindavan Ishwari. You've heard me say she is the Ishwari of Brindavan. In the Brindavan Krishna tradition, it is Radha who is the boss. Brindavan Ishwari. And Krishna does whatever Radha says. So we all, the bhaktas in the Brindavan tradition, we take shelter of Srimati Radharani. Because Krishna sometimes appears to be asleep at the job. Well, Vishnu actually is asleep. He's a Mahavishnu. But Radharani is the queen of Braj. So that's what's distinctive about the Brindavan tradition. Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Brindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hare Priya. Apavitro va sarvavasta gatopi va yasmaret pundarikaksham sa bhaya bhyantara shuchihi. Whether we're pure or impure, whatever state we find ourselves in, remember the Atman is always pure. So our states are all temporary. They're all temporary manifestations of the guna. These are our external coverings. But inside everybody is a pure Atman. So whatever we happen to find ourselves in right now in this karmic moment, apavitra va, whether that's pure or impure by some sort of, I don't know, yogic standard or cultural standard or any kind of standard. We're doing yoga, so that would be klishta. That would be the standard of yoga. What is impure from the frame of moral judgmental frame, not judgmental, but the moral frame of, not even moral, the yogically favorable as opposed to yogically unfavorable. What would that be in the context of the text we're studying? Klishta. So whether you're klishta or aklishta, plug that in. So apavitra, pavitro va, whether we're pure or impure, sarva vastagatopi va, any condition that we're in. Ya smaret pundari kaksham, my friends, if we remember the Lord with the lotus eyes, or the lady, if you're a bhakta of one of the wonderful forms of Devi, that would be Ishvarini. Ya smaret pundari kaksha, if we remember that, the one with the lotus eyes, because you can't describe the beauty of God. So either you don't say anything, which is kind of pathetic if you're trying to reach out. Well, it's not pathetic. It's a rather uncompassionate thing to do, sit in a cave. At least some traditions will say that. That's what the Mahayana Buddhist tradition says about the Theravada tradition, for example. So yasmaret pundarikaksham. So, but if you're not going to sit in a cave and you want to sort of describe the wonders of Bhagavan, one of the wonders is beauty, my friends. And beauty means form. So then you do the best you can. What's the most exquisite thing known to the Indian poetic palette repertoire? The lotus leaf. So if you remember the Lord with the lotus eyes, then that person who does that, bhayabhyantara, inside and outside, shuchihi. Bhayabhyantara, you have that in the pranayama verse, by the way, in Patanjali. Finally, yogena chitasya, padena vacham, malam sharirasya chavaidhyakena, yo apakarot, tam, pravaram muninam, Patanjalim, pranjalir anatosmi. Abahu purusha akaram, shanka chakra asi dharinam, sahasrashirsham, shvetam, pranamami Patanjalim. So now the teachings of yoga, yoga's chittavritti nirodha, then the seer abides in its own svarupa, the nature. I hope you all memorize the 3 verses. You had homework to do. Vritti sarupya mitaratra. If it's not doing that, it's absorbed in the vrittis, consciousness. Vrittayaha panchatayaha. There are 5 kinds of vrittis, and they're klishta or aklishta. Either our minds, our mental or thoughts, and our mental content is an expression of a mind under the subject to the condition, the kleshas. When the mind is subject to the kleshas, ignorance, ego, desire, aversion, and clinging to life, it produces a certain kind of vritti that reflects those dispositions. So they're klishta. But the mind can be also an enlightened mind. It's not the goal. It's not the grand finale, final near bija goal. Of course not. That's a state beyond the mind. But while we're on the journey, while we're inhabiting the world of humans and objects and navigating, then we strive for a aklishta mind, which is a mind coming from the opposite of the kleshas. It comes from the mind coming from the vidya, knowledge, and brahmasmi, I am Brahman, and raga for the Atman, raga for Bhagavan, dvesha for anything that takes you away from the path, and not clinging to life. And the only way you can not cling to life is to know that we are, not just know, but deeply, but ultimately we will cling to life until we actually perceive the Atman. That's the sad truth. Well, I don't know if it's sad, but that's the obvious truth. Until you perceive it, it's just everything is a state of mind, including all the states of sabija samadhi. They're all states of mind, my friend. However wonderful and wondrous and more mystic powers popping up all over the place, they're all states of mind. So therefore, and you still then, if you still are absorbed in the mind, you're still going to fear death. Maybe the highest yogi, and maybe not fear in a desperate sort of, panicky, paranoid sort of way, like someone without knowledge, but you're still going to be, it's going to be a measure of anxiety, apprehension, because It's all you know. That's all consciousness has ever known, is the mind. It's never had. If it's true, and if we take what the traditions say, that consciousness has been anadi, in samsara, beginningless time, if that's true, think it through. If that's the case, then we've never ever had an experience that's not mediated by the mind. And then and so therefore death, and a body, and some kind of a body. And when death arrives and takes the known away from us and replaces it with the unknown, there's bound to be a measure of some ripple, even in a great soul. That's why Patanjali say, vidusho api, even the wise. Vidusho is a vidusho. Vidwan, who's a vidwan? A vidwan is someone that has vidya, has knowledge. Even the knowledgeable, they cling. So these are the vrittis, and they are 5 of them. So there's right knowledge, wrong knowledge, metaphoric thinking, deep sleep, and memory. There's 3 ways of getting right knowledge: through the senses, through inference, and from the words of others. And the same 3 ways gives you false knowledge, which is situated in the not that nature of an object. So an object is a tree, and you think it's a post. That's not the nature of it. That's atadrupa. And a metaphor is the use of language, conventional use of language, which doesn't have an actual physical referent. Like time flies, remember? Deep sleep is also a vritti, the support of which is an absence of other vrittis. But it's still kind of a vritti. Tamas is never 100% still. The gunas are never static. So the best you get in deep sleep is very, very, very minor movement of, but still a vritti. Any kind of a vritti. A vritti means to revolve, move. So even in deep sleep, there is some kind of, some element of vrit, of revolving in the mind, even when it's massively under the influence of tamas. As deep sleep. And memory is not forgetting something that you've experienced, a vishaya. And nirodha is abhyasa and vairagya. Learn these words, my friends. Practice, and you have to practice, and you have to at least aspire, at least understand what the goal is. And that is to be in a state of mind free of desire. Let's just get that out there now and cement that in place. Okay? Because none of this, completely free of any kind of klishta desire. That means body, mind. If you don't want to do that, then follow dharma. Then that's not yoga then. If that proposal is, you're not ready for it, or you don't agree with it, or any kind of story you want to say, then the next thing you do, if in the Indian culture, the Vedic culture, you follow dharma then. Pursue your desires, but do it dharmically. That way, at least the next birth, you won't get get awful suffering. So either yoga, any kind of yoga, give up all desire, other than the aklishta ones. Obviously, desire for the Atman, we've already discussed that those are fine. All other desires, body, mind, got to be given up. Let's be clear about that. Buddhism, Jainism, everything. Right-handed tantra, even left-handed in its own, let's not even go there. But everything else, any moksha tradition, any of it, with a maybe some exception in left-handed tantra. We have to tweak that. Give up desire. Just be clear. Take it or leave it. That's up to you. But be clear about what these traditions are saying. Vairagya. Vai, without any form of raga. If you're not ready for it, fine. Then, as I say, then follow dharma, pursue your desires in a dharmic sort of way. And there's nothing wrong with that as you practice yoga. But don't try to change what yoga means, my friends. Okay, yoga is vairagya. All over the place. Gita, you name it. Vedanta, anywhere you turn. No exceptions. Buddhism, all the way through. Okay. So and then practice. What is practice? The effort to keep the mind fixed. It's a yatna. Just as you do asana, you have a yatna. When you're doing a pose, you have to put yatna. You have to put, if you're doing Iyengar yoga, which is the one I know best, it's an effort. And you have to, you really have to stretch those muscles. There's a yatna. Otherwise, it's kind of just flopping about. Well, the mind is no different. It's an effort to keep it fixed. Otherwise, it flops about. So there's an effort. And that effort is for a long time. We looked at the verse in the Gita, Aneka Janma, more than one birth. Nedantarya, no interruptions, every day, every day, every day, every day. You get up and sit in the mat, you do your japa. Mind doesn't feel like it, just tell your mind to shut the heck up and do the japa. No exceptions. Nedantarya, take it or leave it, right there. Satkara, with respect, then Dridha Bhumihi, then the mind starts to become fixed. And obviously that spills over into the day. All right, and then Vairagya is the controlled mind, no magic. It doesn't it's not spontaneous. You have to control the mind. Just after you control the body when you do your asana. Body doesn't want to do it, protests, but you make it go into the poses. In the beginning it hurts. So what to speak of the mind? So the controlled mind of one who is without thirst or without desire, there it is again. Vitrishnas in the middle there. Just another word for Vairagya. Vi and Vai, same thing. That's Vairagya, this is Trishna. Trishna is thirst, it means the same thing. Without desire for Vishaya, there it is again. Sense objects. Where do we have Vishaya? Nice to make these connections. We had Vishaya in the memory verse. Here's the memory verse. Smriti. What is the memory? Smriti 111. The Vishaya, there it is. Asampramosha, not slipping away of a sense object that has been experienced. So let's say my car keys are a sense object, an object of the sense, right? Because I touch them, I put them in my hand. So I touch them, I see them, and I experience them, and I put them on the table or in the table, and I've experienced it. And then 2 hours later, I'm in a frenzy and rushing about, and where's my car keys? And if I don't remember, then they say that memory, experience, the sense object, the keys that have been experienced, the memory, the imprint in the mind slips away. Happens more frequently when you get older, and so on. But when it doesn't slip away, so there's your Vishaya, okay? Vishaya 111, start building up your vocabulary, start making these connections, my friends. It's just like your yoga teacher tells you, look, your headstand, that's like same as, Vrikshasana legs. Your legs are the same. Vrikshasana legs, headstand legs. And you think, oh, that helps. There's your Vishaya 115. Right. And then higher than that is when you become indifferent to the gunas. You have no more desire for anything made of the gunas, whether it's physical objects out in the world or a mental, emotional, intellectual kind of expression in the mind, because that's also the gunas. No more interest in philosophy, no more interested in emotionality, no more interested in either psychic, mental, intellectual, or sensual things. And that can only happen, Purusha Kyatir, when the mind starts to reflect the soul back to itself. Because that bliss of that mind, the bliss of that mind, is kind of like an Ananda Samadhi, actually. It's actually the Ananda Samadhi. You can connect this with Ananda Samadhi, one of the 4 samadhis that eventually becomes 6. Savitarka Nirvitarka, Savichara Nirvichara, Ananda, and Asmita. So when you're stressing the mind is pure sattva at that point. And the nature of sattva is luminosity, reflexosity, make up a word, but it's also bliss, not bliss of the Atman, not bliss of the Atman. Don't confuse two completely different metaphysical things, totally and utterly different, chit and achit. But nonetheless, the mind can be in a state of sukham, parama sukham, supreme happiness, material, that's the highest material happiness attainable. Highest material happiness, not like the happiness of the senses, rajas, which have a beginning and an end. Right, now we move along. So this Purusha Kyatir, this kind of samadhi, essentially, this sutra then, sutras, you know the word sutra means to sow, right? Su is an Indo-European cognate of the word sow. Okay, so the so and su are Indo-European, and they mean to sow. So a sutra is sewn onto the next sutra. So it flows, so therefore you can say it's systematic. Patanjali is building up his trail, of thought, his train of thought, and systematically. So that Purusha Kyatir of the previous verse is a Sampragnata Samadhi. And it Rupa Anugamat. And that Sampragnata, sort of that mind can Rupa. Here's your Rupa, Svarupa. The nature of the Sva is Svarupa. See the Rupa? There it is, Rupa. Don't be confused. Words. Here's your Rupa, my friends. Let's get rid of this black box. How do I get rid of that black box? Doesn't matter. Doesn't want to go anywhere. Rupa. Rupa. Anugamat. Anu, like Anushasana. My friends learn Sanskrit. Well, what's the problem here? Rupa, Anu. You already know all these words. You learned the 3 words I gave you for homework. The Sanskrit language is embedded within. Well, it's all embedded in Om. Om is Brahman, sonic Brahman. And just as Brahman in the Vedanta Sutra, Janmadhyasya Yataha, this whole creation comes from that Brahman. Well, Om is Brahman. So that's like if A is B and B is C, then A is C. Simple first, 101 first lesson philosophy. So A is C. So if Brahman is Om. So if this universe comes from Brahman, then it comes from Om. That the grammarians are going to really focus on this. There's another school hasn't made it to the West. We don't have it. We don't find it in our East-West bookstores. Very interesting school. The grammarians. They say what's their sadhana? What's their sadhana? They do pranayama, or maybe they do, but that's not their principal sadhana. What is it? Sanskrit grammar. Because Om fractures into the letters of the Sanskrit alphabet. So the letters are kind of like bifurcations or splintering of Om, and then those letters come together into words. Those words then are come into relationship with each other in syntax, and therefore by studying the syntax, absorbing the mind in the grammar, and then the words, you are starting to approach Brahman. And at a certain point, just like any other practice, you're meditating on Krishna, and at a certain point, your samskaric image of Krishna dissolves, and the real Krishna appears in a non-prakritic form, in a form made of pure Brahman. So in the same way, by studying the phonemes and structures of these bifurcation of Om in the form of Sanskrit grammar, the mind becomes purified. And one day, it goes beyond these dualities of language and experiences the Om vibrating, the ultimate truth vibrating through the phonemes. How about that for a cool... India's got all these very cool yogic processes, my friends, something for everybody. So learn Sanskrit. So now so samadhi then is when the mind is completely samahadhi, the mind is completely fixed. So then now sampragnata means with a support. That means consciousness is absorbed in the mind. Not a svarupa vastanam, which we know is the goal. How do we know that? Because Patanjali told us right at the beginning, verse 3. But now the consciousness is absorbed in the mind, but the mind is fixed. Right. And these mental states go through various stages called vitarka, vichara, ananda, asmita. Let me just get rid of that binging sound. I think I have to get rid of this. Bada boom. And hopefully that would do it. And this one. No, I need that one. So your mind is now fixed on an object without deviation. You've gone through dharana, dhyana, which we will encounter in chapter 2. So chapter 3, beginning. So you're no longer wavering. Mind is totally fixed on your Om. Let's go with Om, because that's comes highly recommended by Patanjali. Although bhaktas will embellish their Om with Om Namo Shivaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. That's it. That we'll talk about that later. Now, when that Om, your support for the mind, your experience is completely focused. There's no vritti. You're not philosophizing. You're not thinking about it. You're not analyzing the nature of that object that the mind is fixed on. None of that. You want to do that? Go study Sankhya before you sit on the mat. And then Sankhya would tell you what are sounds, what are smells, what are objects, what is perception. Go study Sankhya. We're assuming we've done all of that, right? Atta Yoga Anushasana. Remember the Atta. Now you've done all your study. Right. Now, when that your mind is fixed on that object through consciousness is flowing through the mind, it's contained in the mind. If you didn't have a mind, my friend, you'd be omniscient. Nothing would stop consciousness. And consciousness is like light. It would just keep like light. We talk about Big Bang, right? The light is still traveling after 14 billion years, pervading the universe. So if light can do that, and light's just a grosser physical element, well, what about consciousness? Why wouldn't consciousness do that? What's going to stop it? What's going to suddenly, where's the stop sign? What kind of how would we construe a stop sign for consciousness? Well, when we're in the body, the stop sign is karma, and karma it puts us into a subtle body, and consciousness is now contained in that subtle body. Just like light, if you stick it under a pot, as the commentators say, the light now only permeates the pot. It doesn't go out unless you make holes in the pot. But on this high level, you bypass the subtle body. Potentially, you can get off the road here. Some siddhas, they say, all right, let's go, let's just have this nice omniscient mind and go and enjoy. And they fall, actually, as we'll find out. They fall. But potentially you could do that. But anyway, when your mind, but if you're a real yogi, you want to go beyond the mind, and to go beyond the mind, you don't want an omniscient mind, you want to go beyond the mind, because even omniscient mind is still a prakritic mind, and you're still bound by prakriti. You're not svarupa vastanam. So it might be cool compared to other states of mind, and you could go around. You know what? They're demoniacs. They were demons in ancient India that attained these powers, as we'll find in chapter 4. And they weren't interested in the Atman at all. They wanted just to enjoy, they wanted to dominate and exert power. Who do you think Ravana was in the Ramayana? How do you think he got so powerful? Yogic practice, how about that? Chittavriti Nirodha, how about that? No interest in the Atman. Got off the bus way before Sarupe Vastanam. No interested at all. Svarupe Vastanam. He wanted dominion over the world, but you can get that from siddhis. The yogis don't want that, so therefore they keep their consciousness bound in the mind, but the mind is now concentrating on an object. We'll go with Om, or we go with what your object is. Now, when you perceive that object as gross sound, let's say, if it's Om, or if it's something else like your breath, as gross breath, gross meaning the Mahabhuta. You look at your Sankhya charts, right? You got 25 things on the Sankhya chart. You all got it in the back of your yoga book somewhere. You probably don't know what the heck to do with it, but on the bottom of that chart, you have the gross elements. I guess nowadays we might call them, they're irreducible subatomic entities. And I guess, physicists would say, I don't know what they would say. The first, after Big Bang, there comes hydrogen and then helium, and then you end up with the whole, and then you end up with the, what do you call it, table? The chemical, the table with all the various periodic table. So that will be a sort of modern day, so the ancient version of that is, if you went down to the ultimate irreducible gross physics, you end up with 5 kinds of subatomic irreducible entities, and they're not the ultimate. They're not the ultimate ingredients of reality, because they can dissolve into the tanmatras, which in turn can dissolve into mind stuff, which in turn can dissolve into buddhi stuff. So the bottom line, after the 3 gunas, just raw gunas themselves, which are beyond perception, you could never perceive them. But in principle, the next evolute out of the gunas is buddhi. This is important, by the way, to understand some of these verses. So I'm not taking a detour here. After the 3 gunas, when the 3 gunas get agitated at the beginning of a new Big Bang, right, which physicists put at 14 billion years. Interesting, the Puranas put at 8 billion years. I know there's a big difference there, but it's not inconceivable. If you woke up in the morning and you picked up the New York Times, and they said, oh, the latest discoveries of Hubble, the physicists have had to, they've had to drastically reconsider their time scale, and it now appears that the Big Bang was not 14 billion years ago, but 8 billion. No one will blink an eyelid. So anyway, it doesn't matter. I'm not trying to say, these are 2 different systems. We don't want to map them. We don't want to, force them we can't force two different systems together. That's bad science and it's bad philosophy. But the first thing that comes out of raw energy, equivalent of the Big Bang, that what the physicists call the singularity, that is the three gunas. The first thing that emerges is buddhi, and that's called the grahitra, the perceiver, the linga. It's the first sign. So in principle, that could be perceived by science, because it's a linga, like the Shiva linga. It's the first sign of matter, and it's intellectual in nature, right? Just like, there was Greeks that said that, mathematics underpins the universe, right? Structure. So, you never know where physics is going to end up in 50 years. But there codes. You could call it codes if you wanted to. Coded information. That's buddhi. And then you get mind stuff. Then you get ego. And then you get these subtle elements that vibrational. They're vibrational. Right. When you see an object, that wasn't just a wild little Sankhya excursion there, my friends. When the object of your meditation, you're seeing it as made of these gross, the Mahabhutas, that's Vitarka Samadhi. You're not thinking of it at that. You're not thinking of it like Sankhya does. They infer through intellectuality what is the nature of the world out there. Sankhya is all inference. It calls itself as the inferential. They prioritize inference as the highest form of knowledge. Different schools prioritize different epistemes, epistemologies. Yoga prioritizes direct experience. Vedanta prioritizes sacred text, revelation. Truths are revealed from beyond our ability to comprehend, so they're given to us by the great rishis or by God. And but inference then is Nyaya. We keep talking about Nyaya, but also Sankhya. So when you perceive that the object of meditation, your Om, as a sound, you're not thinking of it. You're not thinking, oh, what is this made of? Is it fire? Is it water? Oh, no, it is sound. What is sound? Oh, sound. No, you've done all that, Sankhya, but you're experiencing it as a sound. That's Vitarka. When you go deeper, your concentration penetrates the atomic nature, the gross nature, the Mahabhuta nature, and because remember, gross elements are actually densifications, tamasifications in the Sankhya chart. Yeah. The closer you get to Prakriti, the more it's sattvic. So buddhi is almost 100% sattvic. And the other end of the chart, when you get to earth, it's the most tamasic. So that's the one way of thinking of that Sankhya, the 25 evolutes of Sankhya. They go from, depends on whether you're going backwards and forwards. It goes from, let me mute everybody. It goes from, tamas is down here, the Mahabhutas, the gross elements, and the gunas are beyond comprehension. They're Krishna's Maya. They're Krishna's Shakti. Imperceivable. Devi hiya shaguna mai, mama Maya, says Krishna. Mama Maya duratyaya. These gunas are my Maya. Duratyaya. You can't overcome them. Mama kamye. This is bhakti. You have to surrender to me if you want to go beyond the gunas. And I believe that. After 45 years of struggle. Okay. So down here, tamas. Now, but those Mahabhutas, the 5 gross elements, you probably think it sounds very medieval, but think it through. What are they really saying? They're saying that the gross aspects, perceivable, what Newton called atoms, now we know that they're muons and gluons, but they are irreducible. And if you reduce them any further, you end up with, they're no longer distinct individual entities, they dissolve into vibrational energy. That's what Sankhya says. So I don't know how that fits in with string theory, and that's not something for me I'm not qualified to have that kind of a conversation, but it could be had. So when you perceive your object of meditation on the Mahabhuta level, that's Vitarka Samadhi. You're experiencing it, your mind is fixed on its object, it's a lambana is the object. When that object is experienced as a gross entity, then that's Vitarka. When your concentration, your mental, remember the mind is the substructure of everything. The mind penetrates that dent, just like scientists penetrated the atom and they found other entities inside. And now people are talking about strings, which are not atomic at all. They're not individualized packets of matter at all. So Sankhya would agree with that. They'd say, yeah, that sounds a bit like what we're saying. So when your concentration penetrates it and you perceive the tanmatra, which they correlate with seeing, feeling, touching. Okay, that sounds weird to us, but these are the shaktis that underpin those abilities in the psychic body. I don't know how you have a conversation with a scientist about that. Take it or leave it. That's the Sankhya model. But when your intense mental concentration on your object penetrates the gross atomic, subatomic nature of it, and you now start to perceive it as subtle matter, that's vichara. You then go deeper still, and you start to get to the pure sattva. You start to get to the mental aspect of it. That's Ananda Samadhi. Ananda. Krishna talks about it in the Gita. Here. He knows that infinite. Let's go back a verse. Let's go back a verse, my friends. We have a little, it's nice to make these connections because the commentators do. Look. My friends, I'm all excited. Look, as a lamp in a windless place does not flicker. That's Samprajñata Samadhi. No flickering. Dharana, dhyana, still a little bit of flickering. Not samadhi. Dhyana's pretty steady. But samadhi, no flicker. So you have to, so Gita, it's not a sutra, so it's a metaphor. It's more of a Vedanta text. It's more in the kind of Upanishadic way of expressing. So it uses metaphor. As a lamp in a windless place does not flicker. Of such is compared the yokin of concentrated mind, performing the yoga of the self. What's the yoga of the self? The Svarupa Vastanam, my friends. When the mind comes to rest over here, restrained by the practice of yoga. What's the word for restrained? Niroditaha. Look. Nirudham. Do you see? Nirud is the verb. Nirod is just another form of the root nirud. Do you see the nirud? Look at it. Nirud. Doesn't that give you goosebumps, my friends? When the mind comes to rest, restrain the rudham by the practice of yoga. When beholding the self by the self, he's content in the self. What does that mean? Well, that's Svarupa Vastanam, but I'm going to say that's Asmita Samadhi. You're beholding the big self, the Atman, by the little, see the big S and the little s? By the mind. The commentators take it this way. Because when you're in Nirbija, no one's beholding anybody. There's no duality. There's just Svarupa Vastanam. But in the Asmita and the Ananda Samadhis, the mind is perceiving the self. It's reflecting the self. How can the mind grasp something subtler than itself? That's a puzzle. That's, I think, a little mysterious. It can't experience it because it's too subtle. But it can reflect it back to itself. And that reflection of the Atman in the mind, in Asmita Samadhi, Krishna says in the next verse, he knows that infinite happiness which is grasped by the intellect. Buddhi. So this is not the Ananda inside, inherent in the Atman. Ananda of Vedanta, not there yet. It is the Sukham. He uses the word Sukham, not Ananda. Look, Sukham. How do I get this over? Get rid of this. The Sukham Atyantikam. There's no end to it, which is Buddhi Grayam. It's grasped by the Buddhi. And it's Atindriyam. It's got nothing to do with the senses. It's beyond the senses. It's not like a sensual pleasure. Right? Established there, he doesn't deviate from the truth. There's no going back. So that is this. That is this. Ananda Samadhi. Here he calls it Ananda. Krishna prefers to use the term Sukha, same thing. You've now perceived the pure sattvic substratum, not only of the gross elements, but also of the subtle elements. The subtle elements themselves, the tanmatras, the subtle vibrational qualities of themselves, actually densification of mind stuff. And then asmita, samadhi. You know, asmita is a klesha. That's a different asmita. That's when consciousness is identifying with the body mind. Asmi means I am. So when you think your body mind, that's klishta. That's wrong. You're not body mind. So that's klishta asmi. That's the fault. That is the incorrect. That's the avidya. That's the ignorant asmi. But when the mind is reflecting the Atman back to itself, the Atman is, this is what they say, because you can't really, it's beyond philosophy. So they use a metaphor. The mind becomes like a mirror. You've all heard it. The mirror of the mind becomes so pure, so lucid, nothing disturbing its surface, no vrittis. You're in samadhi. Your chitta in a state of nirodha, niruddham. So the mind can now, but it's sattvic. It's still matter, but it's such like a mirror. It's translucent, and it's reflective, and it reflects the Atman back to itself. So now the mind says, Asmi, or that's who I am. Brahmasmi, that's what Brahmasmi is all about. I am Brahman. But the mind is saying that. Atman doesn't say anything. Atman is consciousness. And eventually its goal is to just be conscious of itself. But now it's still conscious of the mind, but the mind in a fully enlightened state. Okay? So samprajñata samadhi follows the nature of the mind. There are 4 kinds of samadhi. Later on, sabija samadhi. Here they're called samprajñata, same thing, samprajñata, sabija. No commentator makes any distinction between the two. And when the mind is in the, and that sabija, bija means your mind is focused on an object. That object leaves a bija. Bija means samskara. When the mind is focused on an object, whether it's Om or whatever it is, it's going to leave an imprint. That's just the nature of the mind. It can't help it. It's like I don't know, a tape recorder. You put a tape recorder on, it's gonna, and a sound, and then a sound is next to it, it will record it, whether you want it to or not. That's the nature of a tape recorder. I don't know if that's a great example, but let's go with it. So the mind will be aware of anything that's in its vicinity. And in sabija samadhi, the object of it is to only let one thing in the vicinity of the mind. That's the object of your meditation, just one thing, because you can't jump from a vritti, just endless vritti state of mind. You can't suddenly jump to near bija. How are you going to do that? You've been infinite births, vrittying, as a dog, as a cat, as a bug, as a tree. The trees vritti in their own little way. Otherwise, how do they know when the sun rises? There's intelligence of some form, maybe not in the same form as ours. So you can't just jump from that to the bija. Are you kidding me? So therefore, the intermediary process is you train the mind to be still, so that it doesn't distract, throw up any distractions. But to do that, you can't just go from multi-content to zero content. You go from multi-content and you practice one content, one focus. That's your mantra, or whatever it is. Mantra comes 99% recommended in most traditions, but Patanjali says fix it on anything you want. Now, when you're fixed on that object, you experience it in 4 different stages as you go deeper and deeper into its metaphysical reality. The reality is that, just as physics will say, the reality of an atom is it's not real. An atom's not real because it's really electrons and neutrons. And they're not real because they ultimately are whatever they say now. Muons and gluons. And the string theorists will say, well, even they're not real. Maybe they're also just these sort of, individualizations of whatever string. But the idea that atoms could eventually be densifications of subtler vibrational stuff is not ridiculous. All right, so these are the samprajñata states. We're going to return to those in verse 40. He's going to divide vitarka and vichara in sa, vitarka, nirvitarka. Now, the anyaha, The other one, what's the other one? Asampragnata. What's asampragnata? Nirbija. What's nirbija, my friends? Svarupa vastanam. That's not a state of mind. Let's remind ourselves. That's not a state of mind. Svarupa vastanam is nirbija samadhi. Let's just be very, very clear about that. And let's just quickly go back to verse number 1 and 2. Look. What is yoga? Chitta-vritti nirodha. Then what? The siya, svarupa vastanam, abides in its own nature. That's nirbija, no more bija, no more mind. It's gone beyond the mind. It's absorbed in its own nature. So now the mind is not functioning, and therefore not focusing on the object. So there's no bija, because if you focus on an object, that object leaves a bija. It's no bija. Okay? Otherwise, it's vritti sarupyam. It's absorbed in the vrittis. So, okay, now the other one, he doesn't even name it. Actually, he never says asampragnata. I think he says nirbija. It's been 10 years since I did this, my friends. I'm amazed I still remember it all. I love this. It's such a lot in this text. I never did it for myself because I'm a bhakta. And we're not interested in Sarupa Vastana. We want Bhagavan. But when I was teaching in Cambridge, and my first job, and I'll just tell you a little story. I don't know whether you're interested. You know what? No, I won't. Let's just stick with the sutras. Right.
Tell us the story.
Oh no, I was just gonna say. So there I was, my first job. I happened to be Harvard. I don't know how that happened, but somehow I got this phone call and blah blah blah. So non-tenure track, but it doesn't matter. So then I get a random call from someone called Patricia Walden. The boss there, she says, "Oh, can you come in?" Patricia Walden is probably the senior most Iyengar yoga teacher in North America. And she says, "Could you come and teach the sutras in the studio?" And I taught the sutras in, intro to Indian philosophy. If I hadn't done a really in-depth study, I said, "Yeah, but you know what? I'm much more. I know the Gita better." She said, "Okay, come and teach the Gita." I can't remember. Anyway, maybe I taught the Yoga Sutras. So I went down and I started teaching the Yoga Sutras, and I realized there's this huge community that regard the sutras as a canonical text, as a source of spiritual authority and guidance. They don't have a clue about what the sutras are really. In the tradition, they don't have a clue about the traditional understanding of the sutras. They might be modern renditions. I'm not commenting. I'm not judging. But it was very obviously, immediately clear. They didn't have a clue about. There was no understanding of the pre-modern traditional interpretation of the sutras. And then I thought, you know what? Someone's going to take this on. So then I did it for the yoga community, and it took 5 years. Reading every single thing, every single traditional commentary, every secondary, everything scholars said about it, everything. And it was a wonderful, and I got to really understand the yogic, I got to really deeply understand and appreciate the yogic, and it helped my japa. It helped my own meditation, but I got to understand yoga psychology. So I don't know why I said all that, but yeah, I did it for you lot. There we are. Sorry, I shouldn't say you lot, you wonderful people. You great beings out there. That's UK Brit English for you. Right now. Okay, so let's keep going. Right, now, the other one, he never names it. He never says ansapragyata. So the commentators say, well, the other one, if sampragnata has the, well, the other one is asampragnata. Now, notice that they never name it. Because what are you going to call it? You could call it asampragnata. Yeah, you can call it nirbija. The Upanishads call it the four stages of consciousness. So they say there's waking, they give it a name because we understand what waking means. So if you say waking, we understand. And then they say dream, okay, we understand that, we dream. Then they say deep sleep, okay, we understand that. But if you throw a label at the fourth, we wouldn't understand it because they would be beyond words. So they just say the fourth. They don't even bother trying to come up with an adjective that is in any way appropriate. They'll call it the fourth. Here's the same thing. The other one, anyaha. The other one, purva, is preceded by the abhyasa. There's all your abhyasa, my friends. Don't tell me you don't remember where we found Abhyasa. Where's we find Abhyasa? Come on. What's Nirodha? Abhyasa.
Vyasa Vairagya.
Yes. Well done. So the other, near bija is purvaha, is preceded by the abhya, the practice of the virama pratyaya. Virama means the blocking pratyaya, the blocking samskara. When you're sitting meditating, the mind wants to throw up thoughts of breakfast and email, right? And there's another part of the mind, if you're a serious meditator, that's blocking those. Virama means to block. It's later on, it's going to be called the Nirodha Samskara, which you can see how what that means, because we in Nirodha, there has to be a samskara that's nirodhering the other samskaras. You're sitting there meditating, right? Om, 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 off you go, om, om, and all of a sudden the mind starts thinking about something somebody said or something you have to do later in the day. These other samskaras start overwhelming the mind. But, you know, with practice, what Nirodha Samskara here, it's called a Virama Pratyaya, a state of mind that blocks the others. So the near Bija Samadhi, right before it, before you enter that state, here's another way of thinking about it, my friends. There has to be a final thought before the mind completely and utterly ceases to act at all, and then there's no more objects in the mind, and then what is consciousness going to do? It has no choice. If there are no objects, then consciousness can only be conscious of consciousness. You can't turn consciousness off. That's not an option. That's the first teaching of Jnana Yoga, first teaching of the Gita. It's eternal, can't be cut by weapons, can't be burnt. So what's consciousness going to do? If there's an object, it becomes conscious of the objects, like a magnet. Put iron filings, it attracts them, and the iron filings stick onto the magnet. So if there's an object in front of consciousness, it sticks onto the mind, and consciousness becomes conscious of that object. Really, what yoga is doing is eliminating all objects, everything, nirodha. Okay, but in principle, there has to be one last thought, right? The Nirodha Samskara. There's going to be the voice in the head saying, nope, nope, nobody, no other samskaras. Nope, nothing is going to rise. Nothing is going to emerge. There's going to be that Nirodha Samskara is going to be the last samskara that consciousness is going to be aware of. And here in this verse, that Nirodha Samskara, which is, I think, a better, we'll understand, it's called here the Virama Pratyaya. So the fourth is samskara shesha. All the samskaras are latent. They're still in the mind. But they're latent. Just like your imprints of past lives. They're all in the mind, but they're latent. So everything is latent now, including all the imprints of this, all right? And so the penultimate thought, the ultimate thought, the last thought is this practice, is the practice of the Virama Pratyaya, the terminator samskara. Now, there's this interesting verse, Bhava Pratyaya Videha Prakritidayanam. The commentators talk about yogis who attain these sub-bija states of samadhi and think they become enlightened. Because when the mind is so sattvic, you're completely detached, it's sattva, you're happy. Consciousness is not svarupa vastanam. It's absorbed in the mind. But the mind, when it's completely sattvic, it's happy, it's detached, it's knowledgeable, it's lucid. It feels like you're liberated. You kind of are, but it's not the grand finale liberation. So so Patanjali wants to warn us, don't get off the boat too quickly. And he says, look, there are those absorbed in Prakriti, right? Remember what we just said. Your object of meditation, and later on he's going to say, you know, your object of meditation, which is made of the gross elements, and is made of and those gross elements, that's vitarka, the fourth state of the lowest state of sabija. But those gross elements are really densifications tamasifications, tamas, of subtle energy. And then, and then later on in verse 42, you're going to have savitarka, nirvitarka. Your mind can actually penetrate the cosmic nature of that energy. It doesn't have to be localized anymore in your Om. When you're aware of Om, your consciousness is aware of a sound that's localized. But the substructure of that sound is universal. So you can penetrate the individualization, the vishesha, and you can actually, your mind now can pervade the cosmic sound. We've all heard about remember the Moody Blues, In Search of the Lost Chord? Some of this stuff was floating about in the 60s, of course, in the counterculture and, the first kind of ashrams in the West, and, the gurus had to kind of use this kind of cosmic language to communicate. But now, of course, hopefully we're more informed consumers, and we tighten up our vocabulary and our conceptual structures and we're understanding of this stuff. But in principle, the energy that I guess scientists are also looking for, right? A sort of universal force, that kind of, ground zero force that's holding all the other, I don't know, forces together, something like that. Obviously I don't know very much about physics, but so your mind is now broken through an individualization, dualism, and you've penetrated. We're not talking about Brahman, we're talking about Prakriti. Let's be clear. All sa, bija, also known as samprajnata states, are prakritic states of mind. But you can actually break through individualization, because ultimately everything Prakriti is the three gunas. They're cosmic. And the next evolute from the three gunas is buddhi. So buddhi underpins all objects. It's only when you get to the last level, the mahabhutas, that individualization takes place. And then the atoms in the chair are atoms in the chair, or subatomic entities in the chair are subatomic entities in the chair, and the table has different subatomic entities. So there you get the world of duality. But if you penetrate those subatomic entities, you get to subtle energies, and ultimately those subtle energies pervade the universe. And you can experience that cosmic prakritic state and imagine that you're liberated. And that's called Prakriti Layanam in this verse. Absorbed in Prakriti. You're not Svarupa Layanam. You're not Svarupa Vastanam. You're Prakriti Layanam. Okay? And Bhava Pratyaya. You're still Bhava. You're still immersed in matter. And there's two ways you can do that. Either you're in one of these states of samadhi, either, willfully or in ignorance, you think you're liberated, or maybe that's what you want. You don't want to go all the way. You want to have a nice, trippy time, kind of like a spiritual trip. The videhas in this verse, the videhas, without body. Deha is a body. V means without. These are the celestials. Not all the celestials. The commentators are clear here. Some become celestials of good karma, not yogis at all. They do their Vedic rituals, they become celestials. Okay? Others are fallen yogis, they say. And let's have a look at the Gita, my friends. Arjuna, remember the verse where Arjuna says, well, what happens if I don't complete the path and I fall? And Krishna says, look, he who has fallen from yoga is born again. Look, verse 41, chapter 2. Here. I'll get rid of this blue. He's born again, attaining the worlds of the meritorious. Why can't I? Oh, I just use the scroll. There we are. Attaining the world of the meritorious. That's the celestial realm, my friends. Okay, so there's all kinds of dimensions. Attaining the world of the meritorious. But you can't stay there. It's still bound by karma. The fallen yogis go to the celestial realm. They're different from those who attain the same celestial realms because of good karma. Non-yogis, but they're good karma, very good. They're pious, they're charitable, they do their Vedic rituals. Actually, if you do your Vedic rituals, that's what happens. You go to the celestial realm. But yogis who don't quite finish, right? Arjuna's question, what happens if you fall off the path? Let's look at his question. We had it before. Look. Right. Arjuna spoke. The uncontrolled one who has arrived at faith, whose mind has fallen away from yoga, hasn't managed to control the mind, hasn't managed to fully nirodha the mind, but he's on the path, but he's fallen away from the path. No, he hasn't given it up. He's just couldn't control the kleshas, the ragas took, just surged up and pushed him off the path. Surely some of us have had that experience, my friend. I certainly have. And you don't, it just happens because of the force, the power, the shakti of the ragas, the memories, right? Where does he go? Says Arjuna. He dies, not attaining yoga perfection. Aprapya yoga samsiddhim, the yoga samsiddhis. Aprapya doesn't. Where does he go, O Krishna? And then Krishna says, okay, he gets to go to the celestial realm, and because if you fall off the path, it's because you have ragas. So you go to the celestial realm and you enjoy your ragas. It's it's a place for great. Your senses are subtle. Your bodies are made of sattva. That's why you can't see them. That's why you can't see the celestial realms, right? If we were to say to them, if we were to say, well, we have our hubble bubble, there are just rocks out there in our perceivable universe. We don't see any celestial realms. These philosophers will say, of course you can't see them because your senses are covered by gross matter, and you can only see things of tamas and rajas. You cannot see sattvic dimensionalities. But they would say this entire universe is pervaded with other dimensions made of sattva that our senses can't see. You can't disprove that. I mean, it's just like the ant. The ants in your room. You have ants in your room. They don't perceive your universe. They don't perceive your room. They don't know you're in front of a computer. They don't know that you're communicating with people on the other side of the world. They have no idea of that. They could be sitting right next to you because their senses do not allow them to perceive. They're karmically bound. They can only perceive whatever an ant is entitled to perceive karmically. Likewise with the fly. So in the same way, we're like that. We can only perceive what our senses allow us to perceive. And according to these traditions, Buddhist, Jain, and I'm just telling you what they say. I'm a traditional teacher. You believe it or not, throw physics at it, do whatever you want. But this is the claim. You're not supposed to be able to see them. Okay, so because you're karmically ineligible, you don't have the karmic merit. So there are these celestials, right? All of this connected to this verse. These celestials, and some of them are called videhas. And they don't have bodies, meaning gross bodies made of rajas and tamas. And all ancient traditions believe this, my friends. Every single one of them. I don't know any anthropology. I don't think, you'd be hard pressed. I'm sure you could. Hard pressed to find a pre-modern community that didn't have some belief in kind of disembodied, which is what this is. Videha, entities without physical bodies. Some of them might be tamasic. Right. So Patanjali's warning. Don't confuse this with liberation. The Vedic ritualists don't want liberation. They want to go to a celestial realm. Gita says in chapter 2, they're foolish because you can't stay there. Even Krishna says it in that verse. You come back down and you pick up where you left off. The fallen yogis. So there's a reference there. Now, verse 20. What did I do that for? Okay. Verse 20, you can all see it, hopefully. So, but for others, those who didn't, get stranded in some subtle dimension of Prakriti with their minds, some kind of cosmic, omniscience in a Prakritic sense, or end up in a celestial realm. Those who didn't, itaresham, the rest, the others, the real yogis who stay on the path, their niyabija is preceded by five sequential things. You have to start with faith. You have to have faith that there is an Atman. You have to have done your jnana, you have to study your jnana. You have faith that there's an Atman. Excuse me while I just drink some tea. And then vidya, with that, you have to stay on the path. Vidya means, that's where you get the English word virile. It comes from vir in Latin, means a person. So here it means more like power. The virya means potency. So if you're later on, Patanjali is going to say, if you follow brahmachari and you don't lose your sexual fluids and they remain internal, then you're ojas, then you're retaining your virya, your potency. Just making a connection with the word will reoccur in the brahmachari in chapter 2. So you start with faith, then you've got to, you've got to stay on the path, and you're not going to get blissed out right away. It may take many, many years and lifetimes. And smriti, then you've got to keep the goal in mind. You've got to remember, I'm not this body, I'm an Atman. You've got to keep, a certain kind of jnana fixed in the mind until you've experienced it. It's theoretical. So you've got to keep smriti going. And then you get to samadhi. Then eventually you get to one of these states of samadhi. And in that state, prajna, there is wisdom, because the mind perceives the distinction between itself and the Atman. In the state of asmita samadhi. All this is going on in the mind, not in the Atman. So this is all sabija sort of sequencing. When we take to the path of yoga, we start with faith. We have to have the tenacity to do a daily practice. Remember, Patanjali says Nirantarya in the verse on yatna. Abhyasa, remember? Nirodha is abhyasa vairagya, abhyasa is a yatna effort, and dirghakala, a long time, Nirantarya. No interruptions. You need virya to stay on it, and you need smriti. You need to remember, meaning keep your knowledge, keep your goal, keep, why am I doing this? Keep all that in mind, smriti. And then samadhi, sabija samadhi, and then there will be this prajna. The mind will actually experience the distinction between itself and Atman. At that point, there's no more abhiniveshaha. There's no more fear of death clinging to life. Because the mind has perceived the Atman. Or more accurately, the Atman perceives its reflection. It's conscious of its reflection in the mind, but the mind has that reflection within it. So the mind, animated by consciousness, just like the mind can be aware of the tree out there, consciousness through the mind is aware of the tree out there, because remember, awareness comes from the Atman, but the mind contains content. So the consciousness can only be aware of content through the mind. So let's say there's a tree out there, that's content, that's data. So the mind then it has the impression of the tree, and consciousness perceives that impression in the mind and becomes aware of the tree. Really, the mind is becoming, it's a little tricky. The consciousness becomes conscious of the tree, and the mind identifies the tree. All of that identification, this is the tree, it's not a bush, all that's going on in the mind. But the actual qualia, the actual subjective awareness of the tree, the subjectivity, the consciousness itself is in the Atman. Well, the same happens when the Atman when the mind reflects Atman back to itself. The mind has an imprint of the Atman, sort of, because it's so like a mirror, it reflects it back. So the mind becomes aware of the Atman in a sort of intellectual, deliberative sense. And the Atman becomes conscious of its reflection in the mind, just as it becomes conscious of anything else. It's not the end, but it's the penultimate state. That's asmita samadhi, which we just looked at. Now, this state is tibram samveganam asanam. It's close to those who are intense. Okay, so, real yogis are pretty, if you really want to go all the way, there has to be a certain intensity about it, my friends. That's what this verse is saying. Tivra, it's samveganam asanam. It's close for those who's samveganam, who's practice, their force is intense. And this intensity, this is just, intellectual love to schematize things. So intensity can be light, middling, or intense. Intense. So this intensity can be light intensity, medium intensity, intense intensity. I mean, we're not getting much out of that verse, but that's what it says. So even among those who are intense, there is further differentiation of this intensity: mild intensity, mediocre intensity, and ardent intensity. In other words, not all intensities are quite the same intensities, right? So some are more intense, okay, and some are middling intense, and so forth. Now, everybody's good. Now we get to my favorite bit for my poor malnourished bhakti sensitivities. We get Patanjali throws us a little kind of very sparse and stoic little bit of bhakti. So Patanjali says here, or you can get this through Ishvara Pranidhana. I take this as, what's the or? I take it as this is an alternative to not abhyasa and vairagya. Some scholars want it to be an alternative to practice and vairagya. I don't agree with that because bhakti requires abhyasa vairagya. So I would take it as an alternative to maybe the samadhi states. I can't remember what it's been so long. It's an alternative to, there must be an alternative to the samadhi. All of these samadhi states, you don't have to go through all of that, all those sort of different levels of samadhi, Ishvara Pranidhana, but there's a va. So what's the or it's attainable from devotion to the Lord. You don't have to go through all this talk, these various stages. Bhakti's not interested in any of that. Full surrender to Bhagavan, the supreme being that can bestow, as the Gita keeps saying again and again and again, by my grace, by my grace, by my grace, mat prasadam, mat prasadat, mat prasadat, mat prasadat. He says it like three at the end in chapter 18, 3 times in like 6 verses at the end. So you can
Isn't that implied in Samadhi Siddhi Ishvara Pranidhana, the grace and devotion to God? I mean, it's been assumed.
No, not necessarily. Let's take questions at the end. Not necessarily, because we'll see there's a list of alternatives which are not Ishvara Pranidhana. You could also take this Ishvara Pranidhana with vas that are going to come up in a minute. A little bit further on, we're going to do the Ishvara verses, but then we have a bunch of vas here. If you want to take the va, there's a big difference of opinion, by the way, with scholars about what the va is, the vas are. But here, you can go va, there we start. So then he has this list of vas over here, starting in 34, right? All of the verses are Ishvara verses up until now. So he has from verse, whatever that was, up to now. Now you have your va here. Or you can fix the mind on the prana, now another va. Or you can fix it on a Vishaivati, on a supernormal sense object, and then you have another va here. Or on basically a chakra, and then he has here, or you can fix, see the va. So you can take that Ishvara Pranidhana as an option. So all these are options. They're not all theistic. You don't have to be a theist to do Chittavritti Nirodha. Jains are not theists, and they do Chittavritti Nirodha. Buddhists are not theists, and they do Chittavritti Nirodha. So the question is, what does the va refer to? You can take it as an option, as going back to those Samprajñata Samadhi, or you could take it as a va, and then he continues the list, right? He's not ready to continue the list of other options because he wants to talk about Ishvara for a few verses. So clearly Ishvara comes as first on the list, and then you have, just give me a second. I just want to refresh. I went through this before. I just want to refresh my mind about what did I what did I write in my commentary? Which everything in my commentary, by the way, is the tradition. I didn't add anything or change anything. Right. So then we have this whole thing, blah, 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 blah. So one option is you take it with the whole list of vase, and before he's ready to look at the other items of the list, he wants to expound on the Ishvara option. Okay. Where do I just, okay, I don't want to take up your time. I'll check that before next class. Right. So, or you can attain samadhi by Ishvara Pranidhana, or it's an option. Right. Now, who is this Ishvara? Now he's going to, the next 10 verses, he's going to unpack this option. You know, who is this Ishvara? Who is he that he can give us samadhi? Pranidha, to pranidha, to place oneself down and before. So sort of like submission, where you kind of like down, forward, down, place. So Ishvara is also a Purusha, an Atman. Usually we call the Paramatman, but he's Vishesha, he's different from us. This is not Advaita Vedanta. This is closer to Vaishnava notions of God as eternally distinct being. That's the position of the Nyaya and the non-Advaita schools of Vedanta, the Vaishnava Vedantins and Nyaya and Yoga, that Ishvara is what does it mean to be a Purusha? He's an individual entity made of pure consciousness, whose essence is pure consciousness, but he's a Vishesha. He's distinct. This is not Advaita Vedanta. The Advaita Vedanta tends to get, you know, superimposed on everything. Advaita Vedanta is one sub-branch of Vedanta. It's not even Vedanta. It's Advaita Vedanta. And there are Dvaita Vedantas, Dvaita, dualistic, and Vishishta Dvaitas, and Dvaita Dvaitas, and other forms of Vedanta where Ishvara is eternally distinct being, closer to Christianity perhaps, and the Abrahamic notion of Ishvara. So Ishvara is a Purusha Vishesha, special kind of, and how is he special? Aparamrishtaha, never been affected. Never been affected by kleshas, ignorance, ego, by karma, by samskaras, vipaka shayer, by, you know, the kind of the fructification of samskaras, never been affected. So he's not a yogi, right? So the commentators are quite clear here. He's not like the Buddha. The Buddha was once not enlightened, and there's a whole genre of Buddhist texts called the Jatakas about the past life of the Buddha. So the commentators say he's not like the Buddha. He's not like the Buddha. He's not like Kapila, the speaker of Sankhya. He's not like these beings that were once not enlightened and became enlightened. No, no, no. Ishvara was never been affected by the kleshas and karma. So he's transcendent, and his seed, bijam, of omniscience is unsurpassed. You know, what does it mean? Because omniscience already means everything. What does it mean that, why would he say his omniscience is unsurpassed? Omniscience is surely omniscience. Well, here I had to sort of think about it because the commentators didn't pick up on this. And here's so I'm going to tell you when it's my thought process, and I thought intensely about this, but I'm bringing in information from other texts, so it's not just my chitta vritti. And that is, the yogi can know everything within a universe. I have grounds for this, for taking this position. The Indian cosmology, there are infinite universes. A siddha can know by passing the karmic ego, right? The ego is trapped by karma, so you can only know what this particular body mind allows you to know. So your senses can only see, even if you have 20/20, right? A certain distance, a dog can see further, smell better, vultures can see further. So karmically, we're all different. But what if you take away the karmic, the kind of limitation imposed by karma? You bypass the limitations of the subtle body. Now your mind stuff can permeate the whole universe. So a siddha can these are the claims, take it or leave it, not just a yoga. You can know everything in a universe. Patanjali is going to come up and say that in a minute, and elsewhere. And all traditions accept this. So that's a kind of omniscience. But only in a universe. But Ishvara is the generator of infinite multiverses. Infinite universes come from Ishvara, number one. And now Vedanta says, Vedanta, not yoga, but remember, yoga accepts Vedanta. Just because something is not written here and it's written in Vedanta, it's not a different thing. Yoga is assuming that this is all one kind of interwoven. I mean, there are differences between the schools, no doubt, but a massive amount of it is shared. Vedanta says the difference between a siddha, an accomplished yogi, and Ishvara is that the accomplished yogi can do anything in a universe, mystic powers, but cannot create the universe in the first place. This is very similar to this. A yogi can know everything in the universe, but not anything beyond it. So that's the difference. Ishvara is, from Vedanta, creates the universe in the first place and infinite universes. That's Vedanta. And here, his omniscience is unsurpassed. The siddha, the yogi, accomplished yogi, can know everything in a universe, but nothing beyond it. Whereas Ishvara knows infinite universes, and plus, if we, the Vaishnava tradition, there are an infinity of dimensions in Brahman itself, beyond Prakriti. In Brahman, there are realms made of pure consciousness, not made of the gunas. They're called Vaikuntha and Goloka. So Ishvara knows all of that, whereas the accomplished siddha can only know, which is, of course, a grand claim, it can only know everything in this universe. So that's the claim that the Yoga Sutras make, that the fully accomplished siddha, who's not in a state of Swarupa Vasanam, still absorbed in the mind, but the mind potentially can actually penetrate, just like light can penetrate every corner of the universe, so can mind stuff. Because the universe is a manifestation from mind stuff. So if you tap into the core substratum of the universe, you're tapping into non-individualized mind, which pervades everything. And therefore, if you tap into that, you then tap into the Prakritic, not the ultimate source, which are the gunas, but it's still a substratum of all reality. All right. So I don't know if that made any sense, but Ishvara is not on that level. His omniscience is unsurpassed. And Purveshamapi Guru, he was the guru. He may be transcendent, but it's not that he's not connected with the world. He's a guru. Krishna says in the Gita, I'm the guru. Guru means you give information. That's a guru, is the teacher who gives information. These texts are considered authoritative because they come from Ishvara. Who's Patanjali in traditional? What is all this Abahu Purusha Akaram? That invocation, that Iyengar chants, Shankar Chakra Siddharinam Sahasra. It's a form of Ishvara. It's Shesha, a form. There's infinite forms of Ishvara, has to be infinite. And these forms have to be infinite. The infinite beautiful forms of Ishvara, my friends. And that we're like little ants. We're trapped in our body mind. We think, oh, it's mythology. Oh, it's like Greco-Roman myth. It's all mythology. Okay, well, we can think like that if we want. So, Purveshamapi Guruhu, he's the guru of the ancient. How can he be guru of the ancients? The ancients are ancient. They're gone. They're dead. Why? Kalin and Avachi. That he's not affected by Kala, time. We're affected by time. We're trapped karmically. Right now, we're trapped. We're trapped in this moment. We're here. You can't suddenly go back and study with Aristotle or the Buddha, because karmically we're trapped here. So, but Ishvara is not trapped by karma. So Ishvara can enter into Prakriti, 2000 BCE, 1,000 years ago, anytime. And remember the Gita, yada yada hi dharmasya glanir, whenever there's a decline in dharma, tadatmanam srijami aham, I enter into the universe. Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha dushkrita dharma samstapanartaya. I come to reestablish dharma. That's the guru. Comes to teach, whether it's dharma, whether it's Ayurveda, whether it's yoga. These traditions consider themselves. Vedanta is penned by Vyasa. Vyasa is who's Vyasa? He's considered to be an Ankshar of Narayana, a partial incarnation of. There's all kinds of incarnations. There's full incarnations. There's partial incarnations. There's Shaktavesha. when Bhagavan gives Shakti to somebody, there's many categories, which the Bhakti theologians like to, they're intellectuals but they're bhaktas also. So they like to sort of schematize all these various types of avatars and incarnations. Okay? And they're all gurus. The ones that we know of are gurus. How do we know them? Because they came into the world and are recorded in literature. And why did they come in the world? Well, they came to give something. To do. What are they going to do in our miserable little world? They come to, Krishna comes, he's called by Vishnu and, this background story. And then he comes and he says, I'm reestablishing Dharma. I'm reestablishing karma. He says many things. One of them, he says, is karma yoga got lost in chapter 4. Yoga nashta parantapa. He comes to reestablish it. That's guru. So here it says, Ishvara is the guru of the ancients. He's not affected by time. He, as Eliade, the Eliade, Mircea Eliade, he calls it breaking into time and space. Breaking into time and space. So I guess it's not a closed universe like physicists think. I suppose if you believe it in Avatara, we would have to say it's not closed because something can break into it. Anyway, I'm stepping out of my field of invitation. And what now? This Ishvara Tasya Vachika Pranavaha, he manifests as the sound Om. The Pranavaha. Pranu is another word for Om. My friends, Om is not a sound representation established by convention. It is Brahman in sonic form. It's transubstantiated to go with the Catholic idea of the communion. We're going to have 4 different sessions on these Yoga Sutras. I think we should do every single verse. I'm not going to do this ever again. We're going to have 4 sessions. We're going to have 7 sessions on chapter 1. Give me your thoughts on that. Okay? I don't think I want to jump. Let's do it properly. I'm always doing this in yoga workshops, 12 hours. We do, 6 verse. We do, few from chapter 1 and chapter 2. That's it. So let's do every single verse. And people, if you want to join, you join. You're all very welcome. And let's do it properly. It takes us a year and a half. Well, what's time anyway? What else are we going to do with our time? So we do one. I think it's going to end up that way. This is what, our 3rd or 4th? I don't know. But we're on verse 2. I'm not going to, I know I take these detours. I can't help it. You study with any Shastri, you'll spend 2 weeks on one verse. He'll connect every word with other texts. I can't help it. That's how we go about. That's the traditional way of doing Shastra. So maybe we should just stick with this. Since somehow or other, karmically, I got a phone call from Patricia Walden. Can you come and teach the Yoga Sutras? And now I'm stuck with it. And it's a wonderful thing to be stuck with. All right, let's get back to business. Right now. So Om, it's a Vachakaha. Now, different, we're just actually in Hindu Phil this coming week. We're looking at the different theories, philosophies of sound. They're really quite interesting. So some would say, like Nyaya would say, that sound is conventionally, words are conventionally established by Ishvara at the beginning of the cosmic cycle. All right, they all take the view that language is eternal. You can't, they wouldn't, because they never engage, obviously, evolution, the idea that we kind of like, were, I guess, monkey, pre-linguistic creatures, and that language evolves, not communication, but structured language with syntax and so forth evolves in Homo sapiens. They never encountered that, just like the West never encountered that idea before Darwin. It's only 150 years old, that idea, my friends. So therefore, they theorized, what's the origin of language? And there were 2 schools. The Buddhists as well. The Buddhists had Buddhists had another whole way of thinking about it. Nyaya said, Ishvara establishes at the beginning of the creation, the relationship of words and objects. So in that sense, it's eternal. but it gets reestablished by Ishvara. And then Mimamsa would say, no, because they're atheists, they don't accept Ishvara. So they just say words are eternally connected to their reference. Pustaka, it always means a book for all time. And the Buddhists didn't like either of those ideas. Well, okay, let's leave it at that. So, but the Vedika schools, Om is a little bit different. Whether, in other words, Ishvara, whether that sound is eternally Brahman, as some linguistic philosophers would say, it is Brahman in vibrational form. And others would say, well, Ishvara manifests as sound, just like he manifests in the deity. He pervades the deity with personal presence, so that when you worship the deity with bhakti, then Ishvara is there. If there's no bhakti, Ishvara is not there. Then your deity in the temple is like, just a statue in the Vatican museums of Emperor Nero or Claudius or something, right? But Om's not like that. So Om is Ishvara in sonic form. Okay, so that's how, and right from the oldest Upanishad, all that is this. All that this is Brahman. All this is Om. So Om and Brahman are used interchangeably in certain passages. And like we said before, if A is B and B is C, then A is C. So Brahman is Om. So Om is not a random signifier that somebody came up with. And let's call it Om. Oh, okay. Right? Some powerful Brahmin asserted his will. Not like that. It's an eternal sign. It's not a signifier. It's actual Brahman in sonic form. You see, a signifier is something that signifies something outside of itself. The word book signifies an object book, but the object book and the word book are different. If I say book, or if I say food, I don't become satiated. So it's not like that. And the word book is different in different languages. Libro, livre, the pushtaka, kitab. But Om's not like that. It's not a signifier. It is a manifestation of Om. Manifestation. Om is inside it. It doesn't signify something outside of itself like normal language does. Okay, if I say staircase, the word staircase, you can see behind me the staircase. I say staircase, it's different from the object there. Om's not like that. Is everybody okay? Okay. Well, with Jennifer Edwards is having a little conversation there about something. Okay, in the chat box. I just got distracted. Right, so Om, Pranavaha. So what do we care? What's this got to do with Chittavriti Nirodha? Tad Japasthadartha Bhavanam. You repeat it, keeping it in mind its meaning. It's Ishvara. The commentators take this as bhakti, that when you chant the name of your beloved Ishvara, the bhaktas are not particularly fond of Om because it's kind of impersonal. And they're in love with their beloved Shiva or Krishna or Vishnu. So they want that Om to it's like a seed. You put a seed in the ground, you don't know what kind of a tree, but then it manifests a tree with flowers and fruits. So Om manifests Om Namo Shivaya. Om, that Om like a seed. It's a bija. Om Prana. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. It manifests its forms and qualities. If you're a bhakta, you're in love with the form and quality of your beloved Bhagavan. But if you're not a bhakta, then Om is just Brahman. It's just impersonal. It's just that absolute truth. And it reveals its personal presence when only through bhakti, my friends. Bhakti tvananyaya sakya ahameva vidu. You can only know me by bhakti. No bhakti, no Bhagavan. But you can have Brahman. You can have your own Swarupa. You can still be liberated. You can still transcend suffering. You can attain everything the Jnana traditions say you can attain, but you won't get bhakti. You won't get Bhagavan. Okay? So I know that that's pretty dense, what I just threw out there, but here, you do japa. Okay, so what's japa? I'm sitting in the morning. I'm fixing my mind, right? Nirodha, it completely naturally absorbed in the sound Om. And the Nirodha Samskara, remember everything we did, the Virama Pratyaya, there's a Samskara, keeping that mind fixed. Some other email, breakfast, what am I going to do today? Shopping list Samskara, those Samskaras are kept controlled by the Nirodha Samskara, which we met a few verses earlier under the name of the Virama Pratyaya. And that's japa. So for me, I get up in the morning, and because of my bhakti, my Om manifests into the Maha Mantra. So every morning I get up, and quiet, japa is quiet, means the quiet repetition. Some traditions talk about a mental mantra, that's okay, but japa actually means to say something very, very softly. So only you can hear it. So this is my japa. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. I share that with you all. You're welcome to take the Maha Mantra, or if you have another form of Ishvara or Ishvari, you take the name of that form. And if you're not ready for any of that, or if that doesn't work for you, then Om. Is Brahman in impersonal, in an impersonal, even the term Ishvara is a personal being, but when you use the term Ishvara, you're not referring to the form and the quality. When you want to refer to the form and quality of Ishvara, use the term Bhagavan, because Bhagavan means the Bhagavan, the possessor of Bhagas, qualities. So Krishna's blue, that's a quality. He plays the flute, that's a quality. He, has his, all of the features, and Shiva has his qualities. So they're Bhagavans. But if you just use the term Ishvara, it just means God in a kind of at that point, the qualities and form is kind of suppressed, is not manifest. And when you use the term Brahman, it's even more suppressed. And Brahman simply means that all-pervading consciousness. And there's not even, and the different schools understand the word Brahman. Some take it as Ishvara, and some take it as simply the Advaita school takes Brahman to be formless, nameless, all-pervading, Satchidananda, impersonal consciousness that is Sat and that is Ananda blissful. So Brahman's going to be understood differently within the Vedanta traditions, but all agree that that Brahman is Om, and that's Patanjali's telling us to do japa. And what happens if you do a japa on the Om? Tataha pratyak chetana adigama. You approach the innermost consciousness. That's your Atman. Chetana is a word for chitti shakti. In other words, what is the Swarupa? What is the Atman? What is its quality? What makes it a thing that's real, right? If something is real, it must have qualities that we can perceive it by. Okay, so if something has a reality, it must be some kind of a substance with some kind of perceivable quality. Otherwise, how do we know it's a real? So if something to be real, it has to be perceivable and nameable. If it's perceivable, it's nameable. So then apply that to the Atman. How is it perceivable? It's perceivable by its quality of consciousness. And that's called Chitti Shakti with one T. Don't get that confused with Chitta, double T. Big, huge. No. Chitta, double T, that's the Prakritic mind. But Chitti Shakti with a single T, that's consciousness. But it's also known as Chaitana. And here, it's called Chaitana. Chaitana, right there in the middle. Chaitana. So if you do japa, what happens? There is the antaraya bhavas, the impurities, disturbances are removed. The disturbances of the mind. And what? And then the mind, when it's not disturbed, can approach adhigama or realize this pure consciousness. And not near bija, but probably, maybe ananda samadhi or asmita samadhi that we've talked about. What are these disturbances? These antarayas, antara, they come in between, like under. Antara, what are they? Disease, vyadi. Sthana. So disease, and the commentators take this to be, Ayurveda. They refer to Ayurveda, the imbalance of the doshas. So they talk about that under Vyadi. Sthana are idle, tamas. When there's a lot of tamas, you become lazy, idle. It overlaps with another word in the list. Samshaya, doubt. What is doubt? Well, classical doubt is, when an object, you see an object, and it shares a universal with another object, and you're not sure which object it is. Example, there's a tree in the garden, and it's dark, and you can't see properly, and you're not sure if it's a tree or a post. The universal means both of them are 6 foot tall, both of them have the same width, so they share the universal, meaning a property that they both have. They're both 6 foot, the post is 6 foot, a tree is 6 foot, and they're, a foot wide or 2 feet circumference. So they both share the same properties, and you can't distinguish, is it this or is it that? And that's doubt. I'm just giving you the technical Nyaya definition of doubt is when an object shares properties with another object. You're not sure whether it's this object or that object. Now, that's doubt. So all of these are obstacles. But what's it's got to, Vyas gives us a better example. He says, I doubt whether, if you doubt, can I do this yoga or can I not do the yoga? He gives us an example more connected to our practice. Can I do this yoga or can I not? Like, remember Arjuna's question? Well, what happens to the fallen soul? The fallen yogi? What's he really saying? Well, can I do it or not? What if I start and I don't finish? That's doubt. Right? He even calls it doubt. Look, he even calls it doubt. Look. Here. Look, doubt. There it is, doubt. Samshaya, you see it? 639. This is my samshaya, my doubt, Krishna. Right? What happens if I start and I don't finish? Now I have a doubt. What's the point in starting something if I know I can't finish? That's what he's really saying. What's the point in starting? There it is, samshaya. You see the same word, my friends? Making these nice connections. So his doubt is, well, why does it make any sense to start something I know I can't finish? There's an example of samshaya, chapter 6. Right, pramada is idleness. It's just laziness. Right, sthana is more like lethargy. It's not the same as laziness is more willful, whereas sthana is more like one commentator says too much kapha. It's more a physiological condition of the body that it is. Anyway, I don't know. I don't know why this verse is even here, to be honest. Right, I'm sorry. Let me do that again. Pramada. We missed that one. We were doing pramada is carelessness, being careless in your practice, not taking it seriously. Right. Alasya is sloth. That's different from sloth is more a mental condition of laziness, as opposed to sthana was more tamasically lethargic. It's more physiological. I missed out the pramada, right? Bhranti darshana. Some commentators take, the commentators do different things with this. Bhranti darshana is some commentators take it to mean that you're on the wrong path. And nowadays we don't like to sort of we don't like sectarianism, but usually in the Yoga Sutras, the main opposing point of view is Buddhist. The Buddhists, they're kind of like the Patanjali is not a debater. Vedanta, the whole of the second chapter, debates other schools. Nyaya is all about establishing Upanishadic truths, specifically in dialogue against mostly Buddhists. Patanjali doesn't, but he does make some comments. And why? Because yoga says that you have a svarupa, an eternal nature. Buddhists don't accept that. First of all, they say everything's momentary. There's no svarupa. There's no sat. There's no sat. Everything's momentary. So that goes completely against all Upanishadic teachings, that the Brahman is sat, the Atman is sat, is eternal, it's ongoing. Buddhist momentariness, no. They accept they're not materialists. They accept that consciousness is distinct They're not physicalists. It's distinct from the body-mind. It's a skandha. It's a skandha. But they would say it's momentary, number one, and it always is intentional. It always has an object. There's no such thing as svarupa vastanam. Consciousness, for them, Buddhists reject the idea of consciousness being conscious of consciousness. Consciousness is always, even in the liberated state, at least Madhyamika Buddhism, the liberated state is not different from the samsara state. It's just an enlightened way of being in the flow, the interdependent, momentary flow of consciousness. So they don't accept Brahman as some state beyond the conventional world. There is no beyond our conventional reality in Buddhism. So these are major, you can say, reputations of Vedanta and yogic teachings. So they have to be responded to. You have to respond to them. You're a teacher, and then you'll have students coming, and then some of them will say, "Oh, well, we were hanging out with Buddhists, and they say this, that, and the other." You have to have a response. If you have a system, yogas chittavritti nirodha, tada drashtu sarupe vastanam, you're putting it out there that if you do this yoga, then your seer will abide in its own nature. And then someone says, "Well, there is no own nature. What are you talking about? Consciousness is momentary, and it's always aware of something other than itself. It's not svarupa. It's other. Always, it's intentional means it always has an object of consciousness." Well, you've got to come up with a response to that. You can't just say Om, right? Hold hands, Om. No, you've got to have you've got to have a response. So Patanjali doesn't do a lot of that. He leaves that to Nyaya, so this idea of Bhranti Darshana, all of that is because some commentators take Bhranti Darshana to mean a wrong view. Actually, the wrong view, even the Buddhists use the same term, not quite the same language, but it's one of the 8, you have the wrong views. You have to give up wrong views. So, these traditions do, I guess we would call them sectarian, but I think that's a bit of a pejorative term. I would be cautious about using the term sectarian. They are presenting a method that leads you to a certain goal, and they have to respond to those challenging. The Patanjali method is never challenged. Buddhists accept it, Jains accept it, everybody accepts the 8-limbed practice itself. So the actual method of 8 limbs is universal, more or less. Even the Shaivas and the Tantrikas, everybody has some kind of variant, maybe with slight, maybe 6 limbs instead of 8, so they might tweak it a bit here and there, right? The Buddhists have 4 out of the 5 yamas, but instead of non-possessiveness, they have no intoxication, so they throw in non-intoxication. A lot of Buddhists were warriors, and warriors are famous for drinking. If you look at the Mahabharata and about how much they're all intoxicated. So the Buddha was a warrior. So they maybe, the Buddha felt the need to sort of throw that in there instead of non-coveting, which is not such a, anyway, but the 8 limbs is accepted by everybody, but the goal is different. For Patanjali, it's Svarupa Vastanam. And for Buddhists, or at least for Madhyamika that I know best, there's no, well, all Buddhists would say there's no Svarupa. There's only momentary interdependent flow of consciousness. Can't be absorbed in its own nature. It has to be object absorbed, and it's momentary. There's only an instant followed by another instant followed by another instant. It looks like it's sut, but it's like a movie reel. The movie reel looks like it's streamlined, but if you stop it, you see it's actually little tiny stills, individual. So that would be the Buddhist notion, and so there has to be a response to it. All right, and on and on. Okay, so darshana alabdha. Okay. So failure to attain a base for concentration. Bhumikatva anuvastita atvani. Bhumikat, bhumi. Hang on a sec. Let me just break that up. Let me just have a quick look. 130. How does that break up? So we got bhumikatva. Oh, the bhumikatva, the state of having it's a tva suffix. the state of having a firm bhumi, anavastitattvani, not attaining a firm state of concentration. These are all remember, we're talking about disturbances. So failure to attain, and basically failure to be able to dhyana, to fix your mind on your object of meditation. That's your bhumika, the thing, your om. Om is your bhumika, and failure to fix the mind on it. And chitta vikshepa, instability, the vikshepa of the chitta. Is your chitta vikshepa? V means away, like vairagya. The distractions of the mind. These are the disturbances. So basically, by chanting Om, these disturbances are removed. I always puzzled about this. Is it that literally you don't suffer disease, or is it that you become detached from these? I don't know. It doesn't. Patanjali is saying these are the. I'm not going to speculate. Patanjali says if you chant your japa by mental concentration, all of these disturbances, including disease. So I guess it's kind of like if your mind is completely sattvic, well, why not? Your mind is completely sattvic, right? People say health is a sort of an extension of your mind. If there's no tension, and I mean, there's plenty of discourses like that in the alternative health industry, that your physical ailments are ultimately mental in origin. So why not? So if your mind is completely fixed and sattvic, why wouldn't that remove disease? Let's go with it. We have no reason to doubt that, as far as just because we haven't attained those states. We have no reason to question that, right? And there's also other accompanying distractions like dukkha, suffering itself. If you're in a state of chittavritti nirodha, you already aparigraha, the fifth limb of yoga, you've withdrawn consciousness from the senses, so you're not aware of the body. Suffering's in the body and in the mind. So if your consciousness is not absorbed in body and not absorbed in the mind, you're not aware of the sukha dukkha, happy sad states of body mind. Even the Gita talks about this. You transcend that. So dukkha, and then what else? Dormanasya, depression. It's interesting. This is depression. This is the Sanskrit for depression. Dor, manas. There's your manas, right? You Sankhya students, there's your manas. So dor is do, it's negative mind. Depression. Don't we all get depressed? If we don't cling tightly to our, how can we not be depressed? Unless we completely just, I don't know, just completely absorb ourselves in ceaseless activity. Anyway, dormanasya, okay? And then there is anga, like ashtanga. Look at the Sanskrit. So dormanasya ends there. The word ends in the middle there. And then you have angam ejayatva, the trembling of limbs. Whatever that means. Your limbs tremble. I don't know. Make up a story. Or when do limbs tremble? I don't know, if you're tired maybe, or whatever that means. And then this svasha prashvasha, incoming and outgoing. What's wrong with that? Well, the commentators say, well, it's when it's involuntary, and they actually say passing gas as the prashvasa. So these are these 5 things accompany the distractions. God, I keep doing this, don't I? Yeah, here we are, right? So vikshepa saha bhuvaha, they are they're vikshepa saha. These 9 in verse 30 are the vikshepas, right? The distractions, 9 of them, and then they're bhuvaha saha. Then these 5 things accompany them. Suffering, right? Threefold suffering. This is standard. Your own body, mind suffering, number 1. Suffering caused by other living entities, number 2. Remember this, we get to chapter 2. We're going to see the dukkha. Memorize the word dukkha and sukha. Same word, du is always bad. It's a prefix. Whatever you stick it with is bad. Su is always good. So dukkha is suffering. 3 types, your own body, mind, number 1. Number two, other living entities. Could be your, invading armies, could be mosquitoes, could be your own loved ones. Let's say your parent, your parent is dying. That causes you suffering. So it doesn't just have to be bad things. It could be your own kids that don't call you. They don't text you. Am I the only one here whose kid doesn't text? Tell me I'm not the only one. Okay. But that's suffering, so loved one. All right, so the second is other living entities. The first is your own body, mind. Second, other living entities. The third is they call the environment. Hot, cold, tsunamis. Of course, now with all of our weather issues. Okay, these are all removed by this japa and tat pratisheda artam. In order to eliminate it, you ekatattva abhyasa. There's your abhyasa, the third time we've had it. You should practice ekatattva on one object. So far he's only given Om, but he gave the Va. Now he's going to give a list of other Vas, but not quite yet. Everybody seems to like this verse. Maitri Karuna, it's a Buddhist habit. It's called the Buddhist Viharas. And some people think this is borrowed for Buddhism. I really have a problem with this idea of something borrowing for another thing. Just because one text, an earlier text has something, slightly later text has the same thing, then it's considered to be borrowing. But it could be the case. But you could just as well say there's a common a background, a pool of vocabularies and concepts and practices, and they're shared by the yogis in the forest. Nowadays, we might call them Buddhists, but let's call them proto-Buddhists. Before they become formally identified as other. Before they become other, it takes centuries. One scholar argues it's not till the 16th century. That seems a bit late. Not 16th century. When is Kumara Labhata? When is Kumara Labhata, the Mimamsa? Not when we're talking about 16th century. Kumarila would have been 8th century. One scholar says there's no sign that Buddhist was other, and it was the Mimamsas that othered them. It's not that the Buddhists othered themselves and says, "Oh, we're going off. We got a new thing going on here. You Vedika people, later for you." No, the one scholar studies like the early formative period of Buddhism. He says it was the Mimamsakas that became outraged that the Buddhists no longer performed the Vedic rituals and othered them. And then it went into the hands of the philosophers, who then opposed the Buddhist views of momentariness and so forth that we just discussed. So that's an interesting idea. That's 8th century. Kumara Labhata. The Mimamsa. Mimamsa means the philosophers associated with perpetuating Vedic ritualism, one of the 6 schools of thought that we haven't done yet. And looks like now, if we keep going with the Yoga Sutras, it's going to be a while before we get to Mimamsa. Okay, my friends. So let's just tidy up here. And what? So therefore, these, by the way, are not goals unto themselves. Scholars have wondered: are these moral principles? Well, of course they are. Let's read them. So you take 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4. So you take 1 and 4, 2 and 5. 1 and 5, 2 and 6, 3 and 7, and 4 and 8. And you pair them up like that. So Maitri, friendship, and then you go to number 5. You make your friendship, you cultivate, right? You cultivate friendship with those who are happy. And remember, happiness in the Indian psychology is sattva. Real happiness is sattva, because rajas is dukkha. So don't think sukha means happiness, any kind of random happiness. No, it's the happiness that comes from sattvic behavior. So basically this is saying you make friendship with the sattvic. Sukha in the Bhagavad Gita is a quality of sattva. Rajas, the quality of rajas is dukkha. I got to throw a log on the fire. 1 second. To note, so you make friendship with those who are sattvic. And as a result of being sattva, sukha. Then you have karuna, compassion to those who are dukkha. You're compassionate to those who are suffering. A sattvic person sees the equality of all beings. Okay, that sattva means you see the sameness in all beings, and therefore you recognize that that person is me, and therefore you are from recognizing oneness, there's empathy, and from empathy there's compassion. That's the sequencing. First, you have to recognize the oneness. From that comes, okay, this person is me. That's empathy. You're able to put yourself, it's a kind of a selfishness, but a sattvic selfishness. You have to be selfish because you only can experience from the self. Your consciousness is coming from your Atman. It's not coming from somebody else's. It's not coming from anywhere else. Your consciousness is coming from your Atman, yourself. So you can only be conscious of others from the frame of point of origin of yourself. But there's sattvic selfishness and rajasic and tamasic. So tamas, is destructive and so forth. Rajasic sees different selves everywhere. Tamas only sees myself, my tribe. It's very, you're in a box, very tribal, sexist. All of these isms come from tamas. These are limitations. These are blockages on universal vision. Now, rajas is not tamasic, but sees differences everywhere. Black, white, male, female, right? Tamas doesn't even see. It's just tribal, just my little neighborhood. Everything else is danger, trouble, Now, sattva sees the same self. Rajas sees different selves. And tamas only sees my little neighborhood self. So that sattvic self, then, it sees the self in others. And therefore, empathy means you put yourself in the shoes of another. And then comes compassion. So therefore, karuna comes from, you are karuna from sattva. All of these are symptoms of sattva, these first four. Friendship with the happy, compassion with the suffering, mudita, joy for those who are punya, pious. You appreciate the pious and honor the pious. They may not be yogis. In fact, if you do punya, punya means good karma. Yogis don't want any karma at all. The very word punya means those who are they're in avidya, they think they're body-mind, but they're doing their dharma and they're doing punya, good karma. So you are impressed with that. You don't poo-poo that. You don't reject it because they're not yogis. No. You encourage dharma. Yoga is only for a 0.1%. It's only for a tiny minority. Dharma is for everybody else. And also, upekshanam, indifferent or equanimity to the non-pious. You understand who's a non-pious person is really just an Atman like you or I. But, but under this particular life or this particular period of life or this particular moment in life is under the destructive guna of tamas and rajas. So you become indifferent. No judgment, unless you're a king and you have to judge, or an authority figure. Okay, so if you cultivate that, then chitta, there's your chitta. Your mind becomes prasadanam. It becomes pure, lucid. It becomes sattvic. All of this language. Okay, now we're going to start the other list of vas. This is a good place to stop. And I'll revisit the Ishvara Pranidhana va, because I stumbled a little bit there. And I'm going to say that va is a va, and now we're going back to the other vas. In other words, the first Ishvara Pranidhana va, or you can attain this Chittavritti Nirodha by fixing it on Ishvara, and then you have all the verses on Ishvara. He's a guru, he's omniscient, he's the teacher of the ancient. He comes as Om. You do japa, remove the disturbances and the accompanying and fixing the mind, and you do all of this, and then you have this just stuck in the middle there. This verse seems a bit out of place for me. Maitri Karuna Mudita, doesn't matter, it's a lovely verse. I'm not quite sure why. I don't know, it doesn't seem to be connected with Ishvara, nor does it seem to be connected with the list of vas. If it wasn't there, everything else was connected to Ishvara. It doesn't matter. Okay, now we're going to continue next time with our vas. Okay, so very quickly, my friends, we finished for today. So we finished we finished 16 right? Higher vairagya, the highest vairagya is indifference to the gunas. And that comes when the mind reflects, that's sort of an asmita samadhi, reflects purusha. There's 4 stages of this sabija samadhi, also known as samprajñata, right? So purusha kyatir is another way of talking about samadhi in verse 16. That's the highest vaitrishnya. Right. When your object of meditation, you perceive its gross material form, vitarka, its subtler, vibrational essence, vichara, its even subtler mental substratum, ananda, you're going closer to sattva. Finally, asmita, the mind is so sattvic, it's reflecting asmi, the real asmi. Who am I really? Atman. That's asmi, means I am. It's the first person, the present tense to be, first person singular. In Greek, it's esmi. Esmi, I am, asmi. Right. And the other one, the non-samprajñata, asamprajñata, the svarupa vasta, also known as svarupa vastanam, also known as nirbija. Before you enter it, there's got to be a last thought. So what's that last thought? The thought of stilling all other thoughts. That's the virama pratyaya. And now, Patanjali wants to warn us, don't get off the bus too quickly. Don't get off the bus at these samprajñata states of samadhi. You're going to think you're liberated, because you are. In one way, you're liberated at least from suffering and mundane illusions, but your consciousness is still not svarupa vastanam. It's not absorbed in its own nature. It's still absorbed in the mind. So your prakriti layanam, you're absorbed still in prakriti. You're just in a cosmic sort of way. And you're going to experience bliss and omniscience and all this totally cool compared to what in mundane experience, but it's not the goal. So he wants to make sure we don't get off the bus too quickly. And these states are, there's a sequence of faith, potency. You got to have faith in what you're doing, be potent about it. Have some vigor in your meditation, keep the goal in mind, samadhi, and then wisdom. Wisdom means wisdom. All these words, wisdom, viveka, prajna, ultimate wisdom is to understand the distinction between the sat and the asat, the true and the false, the atman and the non-atman, between purusha and prakriti. That's the highest state of wisdom. There is no wisdom beyond that. Beyond that, there's svarupa vastanam, no content whatsoever, pure consciousness. Right. And now this state is near if you're intense. And your intensity can be little intense, middle intense, intense. So you don't want to intense. Or you can get it from Ishvara. Ishvara is also Purusha, but never been affected by Klesha Karma. Transcendent being. His omniscience is supreme. He was the guru of the ancients. He comes as the sound Om. What use is that to me if I'm trying to Chitta-vritti Nirodha? Well, because you do japa. Japa is a Chitta-vritti Nirodha practice. It's the only Chitta-vritti Nirodha practice in bhakti. Most bhakti practices are active mind. But japa is the exception. It's a Nirodha practice. So you do japa, and that will clear your consciousness of the disturbances and bring you to your Atman, your pratyak chetana, your consciousness. What are the disturbances? Disease, idleness, doubt, carelessness, sloth, attachment, misapprehension, failure to be fixed, and instability. And they are also accompanied by suffering, trembling, and inadvertent inhalation and exhalation, meaning when you don't control it. And one commentator does talk about passing gas here. And you have to fix it. How do you fix the mind on ekatattva? Ekatattva, I didn't stress this. One object. Because if you're fixing it on more than one object, your mind is vrittying from one to the other. So for the mind to be stilled, nirodha, it has to be ekatattva. That's why I don't see how you can attain samadhi through asana. You can if you just focus on one asana and you absorb the mind in one asana. That's going to be your alambana, your support of the mind. I could see that could be a possibility, but you can't change from one to another because that takes a vritti. The vritti says, okay, move from this pose to another. Then that's incompatible with Chitta Vritti Nirodha. So therefore, if you're going to use asana, and we'll talk about that next week, as your alambana, your object upon which to still the mind, it has to be one asana. You can't move. And then you have the Maitri Karuna verse. And now we're ready to move on to other vas. If you don't want to fix the mind on Ishvara, what are your other options? Let's say you don't believe in God, or you think, how can there be a God? There's so much suffering, the theodicy problem, oh, so much suffering. That's why people become atheists. Often atheists are disillusioned theists. It's actually interesting. It's just like they say psychologists are all messed up. You know, they're all like they're psychologists, and they become psychologists. They figure out they're all. An atheist often, obviously not always, is a disillusioned theist and can't understand how can there be a God with all the suffering. Now, karma theory has a better explanation than a one-life model theory. Very hard to explain that if you only accept one life, but it's still a problem that everybody has to figure out how they're going. If you're going to be a theist, you have to deal with the problem, the theodicy problem, the problem of suffering. My friends, that's it for today. And I think we are going to, let's see how we do it. Let's just put no constraints on the Svadhyaya. We're going to do every verse, and we said we were going to do what? 7 sessions? Honor our whatever our Dharma, the Dharma. We're going to honor our Dharma of the 7 sessions. And let's see where we're at. And we'll just do another series. We might have to do 3 series. Okay, MU Library. MU Library, would you like to put your camera on? No? Okay. Valentina, are you the Valentina we've been I've been exchanging emails with?
Sorry, I've been distracted. I'm sorry, I couldn't.
Okay,
I'm here.
We'll get back to you. Valentina, okay. Are you Italian? Tu sei italiana? Lo sai che sono italiano, eh? Lo sai, ero nato a Roma, mamma italiana. Parliamo in inglese però. Okay, Valentina, you have to unmute. Non si sente. You have to unmute. We can't hear you. We'll come back to you, okay? Figure out how to unmute, and we'll come back to you. Go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, yes. Go ahead, Valentina.
Can you hear me now, everybody?
Yes. You took your camera off, but that's fine.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. Yes. You can't hear us.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, wonderful.
Yes.
Oh, so nice to meet you.
Yes,
nice
Valentina.
To meet you finally.
Yes.
So if it's possible, I have 2 questions. The first one is when you were talking about the mantra, the japa.
Yeah.
If I don't relate with Ishvara Pranidhana, can I take one of the sutras that I resonate with and make it as my japa? Well, like, I don't know if I resonate with the one that we just made about Maitri Karuna, Mudita. Can I just use that?
I mean, you can use anything. Patanjali is going to say yata abhimata, but you can't be focusing on the sequence of meaning. And a sutra is a expression of meaning encapsulated in a sequence of phonemes that is structured by syntax. So you can't be thinking, contemplating Maitri and Karuna. That's a nice contemplation, but that's not a Chitta Vritti Nirodha practice. So you have to have something that your mind is completely and utterly still. It's not thinking of meaning. There's no semantics involved. So it probably wouldn't be an ideal. I mean, there's no reason why you shouldn't, but typically, in order to avoid that, the japas are bija, they're mantras. Without meaning, they have meaning. But you know, Om is Brahman, but they don't have intellectual. They don't have sutraic meaning. So I would think about that. In principle, you can fix the mind on anything. But you know, traditionally, that would not be a japa mantra. No. That would be a nice pious sort of sutra to that would be kind of a jnana yoga type practice. Jnana yoga, whereas you're contemplating the jnana within a sutra. So if you're not a theist, then take Om. Om is just Atman. Om doesn't have to refer to Ishvara, but the theist Om is Ishvara. But if you're not a theist, Om can just be your own innermost Atman. That's also Brahman. So take Om. What was the second question?
The second question was about the translation of upeksha, the indifference. Because in English, indifference, we have a bit of negative idea of what is indifference.
Yeah.
So would you still say that indifference is okay?
No, I wouldn't. It's too loaded. What did I put? Then yeah, you have to be very careful. I mean, it's not that it's wrong.
Equanimity. Equanimity is the best.
You could take equanimity, or you could take equanimity.
Equanimity is the best.
Yeah.
Working.
Okay. Equanimity, that's what we got here. Equanimity. Yeah. Okay, good. All right.
Yeah, because I was just saying, because you also mentioned about that word before, like 5 minutes ago. And so I was just wondering, because we have this connotation of, well, indifference, sometimes it means,
callousness.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good
Thank you
point.
so much.
Okay, Valentina. Yeah, take care. Go ahead.
Edwin?
Yes.
Okay. So I have two questions.
We have a lot of hands up, my friends. So everybody gets one question, please. And then we'll, if you don't mind. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Very quickly, and it's kind of a yes or no.
Take them out. Yeah.
Saying in the beginning that Ravana was not interested in doing Chittavritti Nirodha, and he got all his cities.
No. He was interested, but he wasn't interested in the Svarupa Avasthanam. Look here.
Okay.
Samadhi.
No, I'm getting.
Look, let's go down to chapter 4. Take a second, and because this is actually quite interesting. It took me a while to figure this out. Go to chapter 4. Oops. Why can't there must be ways of doing this. How do you get the little bar to go? There we are. All right, go to chapter 4. And it says the first verse, the very first verse. Chapter 4. These Chittavritti Nirodha states, no, they're talking about the powers. The siddhis can be born in 4 different ways. They can be a byproduct of samadhi, that's the yogic way. You can get them from tapaha. So demons, the great demons of Indian epic, how did they get their powers? Tapaha. What is tapaha?
Yes.
They did Chittavritti Nirodha, that's tapa of the mind. You can get it from mantra. You can get it from herbs. They like this down in the Lower East Side. But what herbs were the commentators say? Soma, which is the drink that nobody already in ancient times. The commentators say we don't know what it was. It's in the Rig Veda. In the Vedic sacrifice, soma is some kind of a plant. We know it was a plant. We know it was pounded. We know it was mixed with milk. We know it was sieved through a sieve, and it was offered to the devas in Vedic ritualism. In the early Vedic ritualism, that's going back before the Upanishads, there was soma. And already by the middle Vedic period, the commentators, or at least later Vedic period, they don't know, they admit, we don't know what it is, what the soma was. So that's the herb, they take the herb. And Jamma, you can get mystic power by birth. What did we talk about earlier on? If you become a celestial, you have mystic powers. So, but your point is, your question is the demons, the great demons, the great demons.
So they did tapas.
Yeah, they did tapas. And
okay.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much. That was an interesting question.
Thank you. And I have quickly the other one. So is Yoga Vashishta considered a yoga text?
Yes, Advaita. It's a mixture.
Advaita?
It's a Advaita Vedanta yoga text. Advaita.
So can we classify it as a yoga text or as a Advaita?
Well, it's both. It's an Advaita yoga text. There's no boundaries. We create these artificial boundaries, but there's no boundaries. That's a text which is Advaita in metaphysics, but it is yoga. So it's a Advaita yoga text. You know,
Okay.
let's not these walls. You know, the 6 schools of philosophy are somewhat artificial. Marco.
Hi, Edwin.
Hi.
Just a quick confirmation. Asampranyata Samadhi is the same as Vairupivasana, because you also mentioned that.
Yes.
Okay.
Also known as Nirbija.
I see. And this is the state that is achievable in Sutra 23, like by the devotion of Ishvara.
Yes, if that's what you want. If that's what you want.
Yeah.
But what happens if you're Sarupa Vastanam? No more bhakti.
I see.
Because you're now Swarupa Vasanam. There's no mind, there's no body, there's no senses. You are now just in a state of consciousness, infinite, eternal, blissful consciousness. There's no bhakti in that. This is why bhaktis, this is why bhaktis reject it.
But if you have devotion to Ishvara, you get it like a bonus.
Ishvara can give it whatever you want. You know, Ishvara can give you even mundane things. And that's called, it's not real bhakti. The 16th century says there's 3 kinds of bhakti. There's karma mishrita, when you pranidhana to Ishvara because you want mundane things. That's karma mishrita. It's mixed with karma. It's mixed with desire. So you go to church and you say, gimme, 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 right? You go to a shopping list and you go to a place of worship and gimme, gimme, gimme. That's gimme, gimme bhakti. It's called karma ishrita. Then there's the second level. It's higher than that. It's jnana mishrita. It's bhakti mixed with jnana, where what you want is your own swarupa. You don't really want Ishvara. You just want Ishvara to give you samadhi. That the bhaktas don't consider that. The third one is should bhakti. So there's karma mishrita bhakti, bhakti mixed with desire for mundane things. Karma mishrita bhakti, lowest. Jnana mishrita bhakti, which is high because it's bhakti mixed with a desire for the Atman. That's very noble. That's very lofty. But it's not real. But you don't care about Bhagavan. You want Bhagavan to give you samadhi. You know, Bhagavan's just it's mercenary. It's kind of like it's a business. Okay, you do pranidhana and then you want something. But should bhakti, you only want bhakti. You don't even want moksha. This is the big theme of the Bhagavata Purana. You reject moksha because if you're in a state of Swarupa Vastanam, you're deprived of the instruments of bhakti. You cannot engage in bhakti without a mind and senses. And mind and senses, not material. When you, after liberation, you get a Brahman body and a Brahman mind and engage in eternal relationship with Bhagavan. That's a story for another day, but I just putting that samskara out there. Okay, Marco, we'll continue that conversation. Continue that conversation another time.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Prashant, no, bring it up another time, but just we got a bunch of hands up there. And Snehi's waiting. Who is, okay, Prashant, Sydney, Australia.
Yes, thank you, Edwin, for these lectures.
Yeah.
The question I have is around the 127, where Om is equated with Ishvara.
Yeah.
Now, are Ishvara, the Brahman, and Om, if they are all equated, why are there different names for it? And I think even in the Ishopanishad there is Isha. So there seem to be different names for the ultimate reality. And if we are all referring to Om as the source of all of that, why are there different names? Is it because it came in different time periods and became popular? What's your take on that?
Well,
thank you.
I think we need to question the very modern 19th century, I would call it Neo-Advaita, and I don't mean that disparagingly, but the Advaita of the 19th century is very different from the Advaita of Shankara, classical Advaita. And this idea that all paths lead to the same goal, that goal is homogeneous, that it's one size fits all, yatomat tatopat. I think we need to question that. Certainly the Bhagavata and other texts question that. That Brahman just means it just, what is Brahman? It is Janmadhyasya yataha, that from which the creation emerges, right? Shastrayonit vach, it's known from the scripture, and it's ikshater, it's intelligent. So that's the beginning of the Vedanta Sutra. All we know about that Brahman is that it is conscious. Okay, no more information than that. Now, that Brahman is understood and experienced differently. So some experience that Brahman in their own Atman. That's Swarupa Vastanam. Some experience that Brahman, Advaita Vedanta, perceives and experiences. I've no reason to doubt. All infinite Ananta Satyam Jnanam, infinite a consciousness that pervades everything. As a matter of fact, everything else is illusory. And some perceive that Brahman as a personal being. And then the debate between the Advaita Vedanta also, and that personal being then is called, when you want to refer to Brahman, you want to be clear that you're not talking about impersonal Brahman that pervades the whole universe. Everybody accepts that an aspect of Brahman pervades the whole universe and the creation emanates from, everybody accepts that, and all Vedantins accept that, and all Vedantins accept that Brahman also has a personal expression, and that's Ishvara. Now, the debate between Advaita and the other schools is which one is higher, which is the source of which is the cause. Is Ishvara secondary to the impersonal Brahman, or is impersonal Brahman just a Shakti that's secondary to the personal Ishvara? So there's a difference between Vedanta traditions in that regard. Now, so therefore, when you use the term Brahman, you're not being specific about it. It's like saying the absolute truth in English. Well, that absolute truth could be God for Christians. It could be, I don't know, Big Bang for a materialist. The absolute truth doesn't really, it just points to an ultimate cause that in the case of Vedanta is intelligent, an intelligent ultimate cause, but not much more than that. If you want to be more specific and perceive that ultimate cause as a personal being, like Patanjali says, he's distinct, he's the guru and all of that, then you can use the term Ishvara. Now, if that's also not sufficient, if you want to approach that Ishvara, you don't just want to input this concept of a person. Bhakti is about falling in love. You can't love an abstract principle like Brahman, and you can't even love a sort of the notion of a person. How do you fall in love with just, a Purusha Vishesha, special kind of person, a creator? He's the creator, Vedanta says. He's omniscient, Patanjali says. You're not going to fall in love with that, right? You might be interested, you might be, namaha, namaha, namaha. But so therefore, then when that Ishvara manifests, that Ishvara manifests nama, guna, rupa, form and qualities, such as Shiva, Krishna, Vishnu, Devi, then and manifest to human perspective, so that humans' perception and accessibility, then bhakti begins. Bhakti is a relationship between the bhakta and Bhagavan, and then you use the term Bhagavan, not just Ishvara. Ishvara is too kind of distant and just not, there's no name and form associated with Ishvara. There's no form and qualities and characteristics, whereas Bhagavan manifests form, name, quality, characteristics, and the bhaktas then, their hearts are stolen by one or other of these forms, and the path of bhakti begins. So in one sense, they're all the same. In another sense, these different names are stressing different aspects of that ultimate causal truth, which all agrees, at least that everybody agrees, it's chit, it's conscious intelligence. And obviously there's a lot more to be said about that, but we'll have to stop it. We'll have to sort of continue with maybe follow-up thoughts next time, Prashant, okay?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Nehi. Jai Sri Radhe Sneed. How nice to see you.
Namaste, Edwin ji.
Namaste, namaste.
So
I thought maybe we'd never see you again. We had that little. No, okay.
No. I've been having classes. I was for the first couple of classes, but I was just listening.
Okay. Yes, nice to see you.
So I wanted to ask you, you made a comment about in yoga, Swarupe Avasthanam, that consciousness does not need an object. You can rest in your own nature.
That's Nirbija.
Yeah. And it made me think of, in Advaita Vedanta, where consciousness, what I have understood is that, consciousness cannot take itself as an object.
Well, in Advaita Vedanta, there is no such thing as subject-object. When you're on the highest level of Advaita Vedanta, there's no Dvaita. So there's no subject-object is a Dvaita.
Right.
So therefore, in Advaita Vedanta, Tattvamasi, when you're seeing the distinction between you are that, then you're still one is still on the level of Vyavaharika, conventional perception. But once you get to once you get to the Paramarthika, then the Tat and the Tvam merge into you are that, and there is no you, and there is no that. There's no duality anymore. So these categories of dualism, which we're trapped in right now, you have to use them to get out, because you have to study the Vedanta, and Vedanta language is dualistic, right? Subject, object, verb. So this is the big argument that Ramanuja says. He says there's no way of knowing Advaita Vedanta. How would you know it? Because our conventional perception, sense perception is dualistic, and inferences are dualistic, and words are dualistic. So there's no access, there's no pramana, there is no way of even knowing that there is a non-dual Brahman. You can't even know about it. So that's a big argument Ramanuja will raise. But anyway, to your point specifically.
So that's, sorry.
Go ahead.
So I thought that was, Advaita's position is that you cannot know Brahman like an object. Consciousness is verified by the fact that you know something.
Yes. Okay. So you have to go beyond all pramana, because pramanas are dualistic, as we just said. So you cannot know it by any conventional means of the pramana means, epistemology, how do you know something? Non-dual Brahman is beyond.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So that's why Ramanuja says, wait, how do we even know it exists? How do we know it exists? There's no method to even know it's true or real. He's challenging the very notion, Ramanuja, of a non-dual Brahman, because how can we even hear about it? The very, Shankara's teaching, right? Shankara's Jnana Yoga is absorbing the mind in the Vedanta and the Mahavakyas and the great teachings, but that's all dualism. So how do we even know that it's true, that it's real? Because all forms of knowledge are mediated by dualism. That's a Ramanuja argument. So, Advaita would respond, you have to use dualism to get to a state beyond you. They'd have their answer. And so therefore you absorb the mind, at least you're absorbing it in the Vedanta, which is Brahman. It might be dualistic Brahman, but it's, an Om. Om is Brahman. And by absorbing the mind in these Om-derived dualism, at a certain point, the dualisms dissolve, the mind dissolves, all dualistic experience dissolve, and sarvam idam kalu Brahman. And there's just an experience of infinite, all-pervading, blissful Brahman. So then, so that's what they would say.
So for Patanjali, when we use this idea of self-reflexive consciousness, so is Swarupe Avasthanam self-reflexive?
No, but the mind in Asmita Samadhi, that's a mental state. That's Sabija. It's still a mental state, not a Swarupa state. It's a Chitta Rupa state. It's a state Rupa that's based in the mind. The mind is reflecting Purusha back to Purusha, but the mind is still external to Purusha. So that mental image, the image of the reflection It's like your face in the mirror. It's the real you, finally, it's the real you, but it's mediated by the mirror. The face in the mirror is not experiencing the real you, it's a reflection still. In that sense, it's inanimate because the mind is inanimate. But nonetheless, it's a real reflection. You're one step away. That's why Asmita Samadhi is the final sabija state before nirbija.
Okay, thank you.
Give your
Much to
husband,
think
give
about.
your husband my regards.
I will.
We'll tell him we'll do a better job next time with
Anytime, you're most welcome.
Okay, Snehi. John.
Hi, thank you.
Ekatattva. There it was.
Exactly.
Yes.
Could you do a little deeper dive into the word prajna and how prajna, like the etymology of prajna, and how it relates to samprajnata, and also how Mandukya refers to the deep sleep state as prajna?
That's it. Well, okay,
Yeah.
the word is the root is gnya, and that's where you get the word jnana from. And pra is a prefix. So you're not going to get much from the etymology because Sanskrit's a bit frustrating that way, because you take a verb and a prefix. Now, sometimes the prefix has a meaning, like pra means forward, before. So sometimes you can take a prefix and fix it on a verb, and both the meaning of the prefix and the meaning of the verb merge in a kind of obvious sort of way. Other times, the prefix mildly affects the verb. Other time, it doesn't affect the verb at all. And other times, the two meanings, the meaning of the prefix and the verb together come up with a brand new meaning that is not obvious from either the prefix or the verb. That's a little bit frustrating in classical Sanskrit. So prajna is gnya, knowledge. So it's some kind of a mental state. And it's considered higher than jnana. It's often correlated with the viveka, which is the ultimate mental state. The highest mental state is the ultimate grand finale, highest apex of wisdom in jnana is the knowledge of the distinction between the Purusha and the Prakriti, or the Sat and the Asat. And so that's how prajna is in the verse that we read. It's taken that way. I
heard that pra could mean that, as a very old prefix, could mean totally. So it's like the knowing as deep as you can know.
I wouldn't say I've never heard that.
Okay.
Let me get I'll read you all the meanings of pra. Do you have a second?
Okay. Yeah, please.
Hang on, I get my little thing. Hang on. Okay, if this is I just sent somebody an email. I don't want to take up too much time.
Right.
If you send me an email, I could forward you the photograph I took of. It's called Upasarga, the prefixes, and I can't quite find it in the table of contents right this second. I don't want to hold everybody up. I'll give it another 20 seconds, and then you could email me, or I'll tell you next week.
Right.
Where are the upasargas? No, can't be this late.
And I'm assuming that prajna is, the key element in samprajna.
Yeah, there you have two prefixes. You have sam and pra. So sometimes you can have two prefixes and they don't necessarily contribute. They're supposed meanings. They don't necessarily do that. I'm sorry. I don't know why I can't find it.
Okay, no problem. Thank you.
Okay. Next question would be from Sylvia. There's Sylvia.
Hi, Edwin.
Hello, Sylvia. Swadhyaya would not be the same if we didn't have your nice questions.
Could you,
yeah, go ahead.
Could you give us some examples of fulfilling your desires dharmically? What exactly do you mean by that?
Well, if you are not a yogi, then a yogi is somebody who understands that he or she is an Atman and seeks the Atman. Right. Now, let's say you don't understand that. That's avidya. Okay. Now, if you have in avidya, you know, then you have an asmita, which is if I'm not the Atman, then what am I? I'm body, mind.
Yeah.
If you think follow the kleshas build on each other. So if you think your body, mind, then naturally, where are you going to seek your happiness? Right? The yogis understand I'm not a body, mind, so they seek their happiness in the Atman, right? So Satchidananda, they seek the Ananda of the Atman. Now, if you're in Avijja, you seek your Ananda in the body, mind, and that's Raga, because Raga is that which feels good to my body, mind, and therefore you. Now, there's dharmic and adharmic ways of seeking Raga. And the dharmic ways is that you do it in a dharmic way, moral way. Okay, every society has their moral system. The pursuit of pleasure, let's say in the United States, you have a right to the pursuit of pleasure, but you have to obey the laws. You can't kill people. You have to stop at red lights, and there's a dharma about how you go about. And there's a health dharma. Don't overeat. And then there's various dharmas. So if you pursue your happiness in accordance, give some charity to the poor, and and try not to be selfish. Then you make good karma. Then you're pursuing raga under the auspices, under the jurisdiction, under the constraints of certain limitations, which we call dharma.
So they're not condemning desires. They're just they're not really condemning them. You still have them, but you have to.
You have to pursue them in a dharmic way. They're not condemning them, but they're condemning them for the yogis. If you want to be a yogi, then they become klishta.
All right. Yeah.
If you want to be a yogi, then you have this klishta business, and the klishta ones is the ragas. But if you're a non-yogi, then your frame of reference changes. Then these restrictions upon you are different. If you're a yogi, then the restrictions are, the yamas, the niyamas, and vairagya. Rules change. If you want Sarupa Vastanam, then there's a set of rules for that. Now, you don't want Swarupa Vastanam, but you don't want bad karma either. And, you want to be a nice person. But then the rules are dharma. And that way you won't get moksha, but you'll get good karma.
I see. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Subhash ji.
Namaste.
Namaste ji.
I think my video probably is not working for some reason. I don't know.
Okay.
I would like to understand, vitarka and vichara, how to practice and what kind of experience you get when you practice vitarka versus vichara. So my example is I'm chanting Om. And you mentioned that the sound of Om itself, when it's in the gross form, that becomes vitarka. Now, also when I'm chanting Om, there is anartha bhagavana attached to it. So I'm also thinking of the meaning of Om, which is Ishvara, and all those other attributes of Ishvara.
Okay.
So what's the gross form of Om in terms of Ishvara and in terms of the sound? And what do I do when I do vichara? What do I experience when I do vichara on Om?
Subhash, your sound is breaking up. Your sound is breaking up.
I'm so sorry.
But let me if I could just say a couple of things. I got little bits of that. First of all, you don't practice one over the other. The practice of Chitta Vritti Nirodha, these things spontaneously manifest. It's not that you say, okay, let me practice vitarka today, and tomorrow I'll do vichara. You can't get to vichara until you've gone through vitarka. So these are not options, they're not methods, they're not something you practice. What you practice is chitta vritti nirodha. And then when the mind is ekatattva prashtitaha, when it's focused on one thing, then that experience get deeper and deeper and deeper as your practice is mature. Now, if you're an Ishvara Bhakta, let's, first of all, when you're fixing the mind on Ishvara, let's talk about just conventional mental state. Let's say you're a Krishna Bhakta. What kind of Ishvara Bhakta are you, Subhash? If you do want to share that, or I mean, do you, or just come up with it?
In a sense, in the conventional sense of the word, so I'm just using
You can't understand the word, Subhash. I'm sorry.
Really sorry.
It's garbled. But let's say you're a Krishna Bhakta. Now, when you fix the mind on Krishna, initially, what does that mean? You're fixing your mind on a samskara. Either it's the deity in your temple, or it's a picture you've seen in a book, or you've read about the Krishna stories in the Bhagavatam and you create your own picture. You get a prakritic blue and a prakritic feather and a yellow dhoti and a vanamala. You put around that and you put together your own mental, made of samskaras. So initially, when you're fixing the mind on Bhagavan, or it's the Mahamantra or the mantra, which is the sonic. So initially, your mind is fixed on the a samskaric or a prakritic derived form of Bhagavan. And then slowly, as your mind is fixed on that, slowly, eventually, that prakritic form dissolves and the actual Bhagavan Svayam manifests. It's no longer a samskaric construction. It's no longer a mental image. It's the actual Ishvara himself in the form of Krishna or whatever the form is. It's no different from Jnana Yoga. Jnana Yoga, you're mentally constructing, you're mentally reciting the Mahavakyas, Aham Brahmasmi, Sarvamidam, you're mentally contemplating the Upanishadic teachings, but they're all mental constructs made of samskaras, and eventually that purifies the mind, purifies, and eventually those, the mind, when it becomes purely sattvic, in a sense, you have a eureka moment where it dissolves, and it's no longer a mental construct, but you're actually experiencing all-pervading Brahman. Same with bhakti. The bhaktas don't want all-pervading Brahman, they want Ishvara. So first they fix the Nirodha, the mind, the Vitarka form of Ishvara, which is kind of like an Ishvara made of a samskara, which you've put together from a picture you've seen, or your deity of your local deity, or the deity of your heart, or it's your own mental image, and that's a Vitarka, and eventually the mind goes through the various, eventually the grand finale goal, then Ishvara manifests in the Brahman Vigraha, Satchidananda Vigraha, in the form of pure consciousness. I hope that was somewhat related to where your question was coming from.
Thank you. But I don't know what's happening with my system. Can you hear me well?
Well, you know what? Not really, Sebastian. Can you come back next week with
yes, I will do that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We'll take one last question because we're getting close to 9. And no one else has a hand up. Sebastian, Sylvia, everybody. This is the last one. We have Sylvia Eckard. Another Sylvia. Oh, no. Who are you? This is? Do you have
Sarah Yoga.
Where does it say that?
Hi.
Oh, Sarah. Sarah Yoga.
Yes.
Sarah, yes. Hello, Sarah.
Sarah.
Hi. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted you to speak to the practice that's mentioned in 133, because it sounds to me like that's unlike the yamas and the yamas, they're called bhavanas. And what does that word kind of indicate in terms of practice? Are they like embodied, intentional sort of in exclamation marks meditations? Because obviously we're so informed about the metta bhavana practice of the Buddhists, and it's very easy to sort of listen to all those teachings and and bring them into my own sort of yogic practice. But then I'm concerned that there's a imposition of a different system onto the yogic system. So I just would love you to explore that, and whether, you know, you could do the may I be well, may I be happy, may I live in peace kind of metta bhavana practice, and it still be just the teachings of that were around at that time, or the practices that were around at that time, and the Buddhists have just elaborated more on it.
Yeah, this on 233, we haven't got there yet. Can we get there?
I was thinking it was the 133,
well, look,
the
it's
Maitri Karuna Mudita Upeksha.
Well, it just so happens that 233 has a bhavanam. Do you see it? There's a bhavana. Bhavana is a state of mind. Bhava is one of those Sanskrit words. You look it up in the dictionary, and it has columns and columns of possible meanings. Bhava, it comes from bu, to be. The bhava is a state of being. It can be a state of mind. It can be creation that comes to be. There's a massive, great, big, long list of possibilities. I'm sorry about the background noise, right? So in 133, which is interesting, that coincidentally, it's just a state of mind. So bhavanaha, maitri karuna mudita upeksha sukha dukkha punya vishayanam. The state of mind, I've got a cultivating an attitude, or cultivating a state of mind with these following objects. A vishaya, there's your vishaya again. Remember the vishaya we had 2 or 3 times? This vishaya, arnam is just the genitive ending. So your question is bhavana. Bhavana means a state of mind. It's a bhava. In bhakti, we talk about bhavas. Your bhavas mean love in bhakti, so it takes its own connotation. It's one of these words that has multivalent, and therefore used differently, because it comes from the primordial root bhu, to be, bhu bhava. So it's just here. I would take it as a state of mind. I've translated it as attitude. But I think your point is good, that there were these things floating about in the ethos of the ancient Indian yogis before these hard and fast demarcations came about. And that's okay. Namaskar ji. Who is this lady? Namaskar. Where are you? In Bali? Are you in Bali?
I'm in Thailand.
Thailand. So okay. So is that okay? I mean, you can't pin the word down. It depends on the context, but typically it means a state of mind. Okay.
Thank you. And the metta bhavana, the Buddhist exploration of it, is it possible for me to practice the metta bhavana and still be in keeping with
I'm not really, my specialty is basically the Vedic traditions. So I can't locate the term metta bhavana off the top of my head. Metta, I think, is a Pali word. It's not a Sanskrit word. You know what is it come from Maitri? What is the word? So. So metta, it would do it. Metta, Maitri. So metta bhavana, I don't know enough about that. You could check that with, it sounds like a Tibetan Buddhist term, or a Madhya, or a Mahayana. It's a Mahayana term. I don't want to, I don't know. I can't answer that question. I'm not familiar with that. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah. Snehi probably knows something about it, because she lives next to the Tibet house. Right, Snehi?
Yeah, no, everything you said, it is from the Pali
Metta
bhavana for Maitri. Yeah, and there's so much online, on YouTube and so forth.
Yeah. Okay, my friends. Jai Sri Radhe Shyam. And it looks like we are going to have at least 3 different Svadhyaya sessions. We are going to do whatever it takes to cover the Yoga Sutras. Let's put that intention out there. Let's make that the Dharma. I didn't know how it was going to turn out, but I see now I should do this, because I know this text better than all the other ones, and it's my Dharma to share it with others. That's the Dharma. let's hope it helps at the moment of death. Okay, my friends, have a great evening or day, and au revoir. I'm just going to check the chats. You can all go ahead, and I'm just going to see if there's anything I need to know.
Thank you.
Okay, good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, Edwin.
Take
Thank
care.
you.
Good night. Night, night. I'm just scrolling through the chats.
Yeah, Edwin. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Good night.
You can stop recording.
Oh, yes. Oh, dear. Let's stop recording.